This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome once again from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name, of course, is Ebony Jansen. The show is always live. It's broadcast from our studios right here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Don't forget, we stream live in the morning between 9 and 12 a.m. every weekday. You can also watch us back on demand on that same YouTube channel. Of course, today we have an interesting question for you. The whole of Southern Africa is suffering from drought, but we ask you, can the National Water Slide Festival, it's called at Slide the City Festival. It's in 3-4 cities around the country. Can this be held in South Africa during this time that the entire country seems to be in a water crisis and suffering from drought? That's an interesting one. Also, we've got something new for you today. There's a number that we're putting on screen for you. You can call us. We'll make an arrangement and we'll talk to you later again about this. So it's 011-714-6841 or 2. That's where you can call us. Give us a call. Do you think this kind of festival can be held when South Africa is suffering severe drought and water restrictions? But first, let's go to Elvis for a news update.
Thank you, Eben. The Department of Water and Sanitation briefed the Portfolio Committee in Parliament about the status of the drought in South Africa. The Provincial Police Commissioners may know their fate today after allegedly misleading Parliament. And sentencing procedures in the trial of 8 former policemen convicted of killing the Mozambican taxi driver Mido Marcia begin at the North Gauteng High Court today. Now, those are all your headlines. We'll keep you updated on that procedure, and we'll probably go there live in a very short while. But before we go any further, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Elvis, and thank you very much. This is what we've got for you in the sports today. The head of RUSADA, the Russian anti-doping agency, closes the Moscow anti-doping lab at the center of the scandal that has rocked the athletics world. Also, the joint Belgian-Dutch 2018 World Cup bid seeks advice on compensation for almost $11 million from FIFA. And Bafana Bafana arrive in Luanda, Angola, ahead of their crucial 2018 World Cup qualifier against Os Palancas Negras. That's it for the sports. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. And as promised, the Mido Marcia case is currently underway for sentencing. Let's go there live to the court proceedings.
Where the Honourable Judge said the following: wanneer die aard van die misdaad en die belang van die gemeenskap oorweeg word, is die beskuldigde eintlik nog op die agtergrond. Maar wanneer hy as strafwaardige mens vir oorweging aan die beurt kom, moet die volle soeklig op sy persoon as geheel met al sy fasette gewerk word. Sy ouderdom, sy geslag, sy agtergrond, sy geestestoestand toe hy die misdaad gepleeg het, sy motief, sy vatbaarheid vir beïnvloeding en alle relevante faktore moet ondersoek en oorweeg word. En hy word nie met primitiewe wraaksig beskou nie, maar met menslikheid. En dit is hierdie menslikheid wat in elk geval, hoe erg ook al, vereis dat versagtende omstandighede ondersoek moet word. Hierdie omstandighede, indien daar is, skep die genadefaktor waarna in hierdie hof van tevore verwys is en wat dan as oorweging van alle omstandighede moet lei tot 'n gepaste vonnis. Now, my Lord, it is my humble submission that it's quite evident from the indictment that the accused before court has been charged inter alia with specific reference to section 51(1) of the Law Amendment Act 105 of 1997. So therefore it is my humble submission that the said offence, being murder when the offence was committed by a person, group of persons or syndicate acting in the execution or furtherance of a common purpose or conspiracy.
That is the sentencing procedures underway currently here in Johannesburg in the killing of the Mozambican taxi driver Mido Marcia. Now, we'll keep you updated on that story and we'll cross in and out of that court case. So you have to stay tuned for the sentencing procedure right here. Let's now start off with our top story this morning. The Department of Water and Sanitation will brief the Portfolio Committee in Parliament about the status of the drought in South Africa later today. The department is expected to reveal its strategies and interventions in respect of the drought and the disbursements of relief to provinces. This comes as the country faces a burgeoning water challenge that has depleted many municipalities and the agricultural sector since last year. So far, KwaZulu-Natal and the Free State have been declared drought disaster areas. Rand Water Chief Operations Officer Sipho Mosai says that South Africa's bulk water supply is under serious constraint. Mosai says that if South Africans use water sparingly and use only what they need, there should be enough water to last until the next rain in autumn. Mosai spoke to SABC News earlier this morning and was asked if there are concerns about water supply in South Africa.
We're seeing that our bulk water supply system is under serious constraint. So really we're sitting at a very precarious situation where the demand is outstripping what we are able to put into the system. We produce about 4,800 megalitres of water a day, and the demand is sitting at about 5,000. And most of the water, by and large, goes into households. If you start segmenting that, you find that half of that goes to outdoors, gardening in the main. The question is, what can normal consumers at home do? I think we need to start reducing our demand. For example, starting outdoors. Most of our water goes into sprinkler system and lawns, essentially at the wrong times of the day, where we lose water through evaporation. We like to discourage that at this point in time to bring the demand down.
Yeah, let's quickly go back to the demand. I mean, you said there's just over 4,800 or so, but actually the supply and the demand is so much higher. But what do you do with that surplus? Where do you get it from, or how do you deal with it?
Yes, I think what we've been doing since early September, when we started, experience these high temperatures, is that we always have enough water in the reservoirs, in our water storage tanks. As we produce water, we keep some in the storage tanks. So what we've been doing, we've been augmenting with the water in the reservoir to ensure that we meet an additional supply. So you can do that over a period of time. So you can think for yourself, you've been doing that since September, now it's November. So the reservoirs are really drying up. So what we're really able to put into the system is what we're pumping. And additional water from the reservoirs is fast running out.
What is the forecast on that? How long is that going to be running for? I mean, these backups surely are running dry. We're not seeing any rainfall and so forth. So what is the backup, and what is the forecast of that?
Well, it's a function of the demand. If we were to reduce the demand, we'll have a lot more water in the system. We don't have anything to worry about. But if you continue with the patterns that we continue, I don't think we will see December. But again, it's a function of how much we're using, how much we're saving. And I'm sure if we start implementing good water management practices, we'll have enough to go about until the next rainfall, somewhere in autumn. So we still have a long way to go.
Now let's take a look at some of the areas severely affected by the drought on our map here that we can see, if you bring that up. And as you can see, all the red areas, severe drought in the Northern Cape, that's one. KwaZulu-Natal, as we know, Limpopo province. And there's mild drought, as you can see here, in Gauteng, as well as the Free State and parts of the Western Cape. And as you can see, the severely affected areas, of course, the Northern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal and Limpopo. The Free State is also supposed to be a severe drought-stricken area, but that is what you can see there. Now, provincial police commissioners who were made to apologize before Parliament for supporting the suspended National Police Commissioner Ria Piecha may know their fate today. The commissioners allegedly did not come clean on who was behind a media statement backing Piecha. Parliament's Oversight Committee on Police is expected to adopt a report on whether the commissioners lied and what action to recommend against them. SAPS management was investigated for their public support for the suspended National Police Commissioner Ria Piecha. Now, this was after President Jacob Zuma informed her of his intention to institute an investigation. Now, this followed the Farlam Commission, which recommended an inquiry into Piecha's fitness to hold office. Members of the committee unanimously agreed that the commissioners have overstepped political boundaries by publicly supporting Piecha. President Jacob Zuma has wrapped up his state visit to Germany, which is being hailed a success. The President and the German Chancellor Angela Merkel discussed a range of issues including trade and investment, the refugee crisis and climate change. Jack Parrock reports from Berlin.
Two world leaders meeting to discuss their relations and the global issues both South Africa and Germany are facing. The Germans rolled out the red carpet for the president with a military escort in attendance. A large South African business delegation joined President Zuma on his state visit here to Berlin. They're pressing for Germany to grow business ties with small and medium-sized businesses.
And there's a greater enthusiasm here and a greater enthusiasm on our side as well to grow the economy on very specific issues. The issues of infrastructure, the issues of helping us to augment what we are doing in terms of skills development, particularly of our youth, given the fact that it is the empowerment of people that helps the economies to grow.
There are more than 600 German companies in South Africa supporting well over 100,000 jobs, mainly in the car industry. But there has been significant investment from other countries into South Africa as well in recent years.
There is also concern that for some years now, South Africa has turned to the east, to China and Russia, possibly to the detriment of relations with its more traditional partners in Western Europe.
It was a flying trip, with the president heading back to South Africa less than 48 hours after arriving here. This state visit ends with South Africa and Germany agreeing to deepen political and trade relations. German Chancellor Angela Merkel and South African President Jacob Zuma will be looking to ensure that the agreements they've made here come to fruition in the future. Jack Parrock, SABC News, Berlin.
Well, that's your news for now. Eben Janssen is standing by with in-depth interviews and analysis. It's over to you, Eben.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jarvis. Now, the last couple of weeks have been characterized by protests at various institutions of higher learning here in South Africa. Initially, political commentators and economic analysts alike were cynical about the success of the now famous hashtag Fees Must Fall campaign. In just a couple of weeks, students were able to get not only Cabinet and Parliament to listen, but also got the attention of the head of state. In an unprecedented move, students made their detractors swallow their words by getting the president to put a moratorium on university tuition fee increases. Meanwhile, Wits University and UCT has been the first tertiary institutions to bow down to students' demand to abandon staff outsourcing, a lengthy battle that labour unions have been involved in without much success. South Africa has a long history of student protests, going way back to the anti-apartheid marches that predated South Africa's democracy. But to some, the latest wave of student protests signifies an emergent but highly influential voice in South Africa's socio-political landscape. Now, to discuss this, we're joined in studio today by the Managing Director of Political Analysis South Africa, Mzokolo Mpolase. Very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
This shift in the socio-political landscape of South Africa, has it happened with these protests?
Yes, to some level. For a very long time, in the political environment, we've been saying there have been rising expectations. However, what we've seen is that these expectations had not been acted out beyond the service delivery protests that we've become accustomed to. So now to see it move from just the service delivery realm and to an environment where students act upon those social expectations, that has been something that makes that shift for students and also, again, provides evidence of these rising social expectations and the inequality that South Africa deals with.
Why were these student protests so successful then, in your view?
They were successful, one, in that the students had nothing to lose. And also, the fact that they had nothing to lose means that they are able to go a step beyond maybe how workers would do it. And also, they pose a challenge to the security of the state, and they also pose a challenge to I would say, the validity of the system. Because, as I said, rising social expectations. And if you have nothing to lose, in this context, nothing to lose for students means that you have a qualification, but that qualification doesn't guarantee you any place in the job market. And also, even in your own process of getting a qualification, you are then subject to this inequality. And you are subject to basically living in a society where you cannot afford. We often say workers cannot afford, but when it comes to students, it's even more dire because it relates to how your future will pan out. So they had nothing to lose in that case. And then also in terms of the government, the options are quite limited in that if the government simply ignored these protests, right, the alternative is far worse, in that the legitimacy of the government comes into question. Yeah. So government had to respond in that regard, giving students, I would say, unprecedented power in a post-apartheid setup.
Labour broking or outsourcing in this instance has been a key focus of the labour movement in the recent past, but also one of the key demands of the student movement. The students seem to have had success in this instance. Why do the students have success, and why have the labour movement of South Africa battled to change the landscape with regards to that?
Quite simple. The students have no allegiance. Their only allegiance relates to the future. Yeah. So when it comes to labour, labour has been trying to get concessions by being in an alliance with the government. So long as those concessions are not within the, I would say, immediate priority of the governing ANC, that means that the demands of labour can take the backseat in that instance. So whereas students, they took on these notions of social justice, these notions of labour, and incorporated in their protests, not only for the validity of their own protests and really signifying this rising inequality and also social expectations, but they understand that for their cause to be valid, it needs to go beyond that. Whereas labour, their interests are very narrow, largely, and most of labour's concerns and interests will have to be delivered through this alliance that they've gone into with the governing party. So if the governing party does not prioritise it, thereby it follows that labour won't prioritise it as well.
It sort of started at WITS and then spread organically to all the other campuses around the country. The effects of social media that we've seen in other global protests causes, call it organic spread. The role of social media in this student protest or uprising that spread around the country, can you estimate it? Can you give us a view on it?
Well, social media has been very useful. I mean, we've seen it since the advent of the so-called Arab Spring in 2011 period, and all the insurrection that you saw in North Africa and the Middle East. So it therefore follows in that how people communicate in this day and age is different, and particularly for young protesters and universities, they're able to have a contagion effect far faster than perhaps service delivery protests would have, because of access to technology. And this is how they communicate, and this is how the ideology spreads, is how the tactics and all the concerns are, in essence, are the same. So it's really a question of it getting to another university, and social media being quite a useful tool for that.
Well, thank you for joining us. We've run out of time. I've got a few more questions, but the show always goes on. That's the Managing Director of Political Analysis South Africa, Mzukolo Mpolase. Thank you. Now, you saw our question of the day there a couple of seconds ago. At Slide the City is a festival. It's the longest commercial water slide in the world. And this festival will be held for the first time on South African soil this summer. The festival currently attracts thousands and thousands of participants in the USA. Now, At Slide the City will be held in 7 cities around the country and will run from December until February of next year. City streets will turn into a thrilling ride as participants slide inflatables down this massive water slide, well, made of slippery substances that's not known. Our question today to you deals with this. Can the National Water Slide at Slide the City Festival be held in December during South Africa's current water crisis. There have been lots of views around this. We would like your views. You can even give us a call on this number on screen here now. We'll set it up a little bit later. Get your view on it. It's 2711 714 6841 or 2, or you can just send us your comments at SABC Newsroom. We'll put it up a little bit later in the show and have a look at what we've got. Some comments I've been told. Let's have a look quickly at some of the comments with regards to this, and this one comes from Drug the Hippie. We have a water crisis, but South Africa wants to hold a Slide the City event that'll take plus minus 40,000 litres per event. Sign the petition to stop this, says Drug the Hippie. Then Tatu Benedict says, please ask her, given that South Africa is a water-scarce country, who granted the permit for Slide the City? Joburg particularly. It's a legitimate question. Nkomazi, Slide the City should be cancelled, Bele, says Nkomazi. Then Gabby says, how are we having a slide in the city but the country's having its worst drought in years? Logic, where are you? Asks Gabby. Then Bernadette Skuman talks about save water now and put a stop to Slide the City. Yes, as I told you, there's lots of unhappiness about this. What is your view? Can this festival be held all around the country from December until February, when we are suffering the worst drought in more than 20 years and water restrictions are in place? 3 of our provinces are now disaster areas because of it. You can call us if you want to. It's 011 714 6841 or 2. We'll take a call and put it up and hear your views around this. But we move on now. We'll talk about that a little bit on. It's a theme within the show the whole morning, so you can interact with us even at SABC Newsroom on our Twitter page, on all the other social media feeds. But let's take a look now at what's happening around the globe. We start in Europe, where the Times reports that, well, a group of family doctors who control the National Health Service budgets have handed at least £2.4 billion of taxpayers' money to organizations that their members own or work for. Then, in New York, the New York International Times says critics say the H-1B visa program meant to help American firms hire foreigners with special skills is being dominated by outsourcing companies. Sounds all very familiar today. Then in China, the South China Morning Post reports that in an unprecedented joint operation, police from the mainland, Hong Kong and Taiwan tracked 2 overseas-based syndicates operating phone scams and made around 431 arrests. Quick look now at what's happening around our courts in the country here in South Africa. Pretoria, the capital, where the sentencing of 8 former police officers who were found guilty of killing Mozambican taxi driver Mida Masia. Well, we showed you a little bit earlier. It is taking place in the High Court right now. We'll pop in there live a little bit later once again. Then in Cape Town, the Department of Water and Sanitation will brief the Portfolio Committee in Parliament about the status of the drought here in South Africa. That happens a little bit later today. A big concern for all of us. Of course, our question today is, during times of drought, we're suffering the worst drought in more than 20 years. Can the Slide the City festival go on from December until February? What is your view with regards to us? You can phone us, you can send us a tweet, or you can go on our Facebook page and leave us a comment there. It is 714-684102. We'll take that call a little bit later, put it up and have a chat around it. Time to take a break now. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News.
At Philips, we wake up every morning and ask, how can innovation make a difference to you? How can thousands of LEDs bring the pyramids to life and light up hearts? How can an air fryer make delicious traditional meals with up to 80% less fat? How can portable ultrasound be part of a program to help lower infant mortality in Uganda? Because the only innovation that really matters is innovation that matters to you. Innovation and you. Philips.
The road to greatness is not an easy one. It's rough, tough, and full of barriers. And there's only one way to master it. Never ever stop. Dauntless, the all-new Audi Q7.
Welcome back. You're with Newsroom now. The manufacturing in Drought in the Western Cape took place last Friday. Brought together manufacturers looking to grow their businesses in the midst of the challenges of load shedding, rising labour costs, cheap imports, lack of competitiveness and labour issues, including drought, one would think. Now, the delegates also got the chance to find out how to make the most of government's programs to enhance their manufacturing competitiveness. Now, Philippa Rodseth, the Executive Director of the Manufacturing Circle, she's in studio with us here to tell us a little bit more about the outcomes of this indaba. Very important indaba, one would think, for a country like South Africa. Just give us kind of the sort of broad overview.
The manufacturing indaba brought together key players in the manufacturing industry in the region, in addition to government stakeholders. So it was a very proactive and workshop-orientated day where we looked at key issues such as energy opportunities, supply into Africa, local manufacture and supply, in addition to special economic zones. So it was an interactive day where these issues were debated, and certainly challenges were identified, but in addition opportunities were also seen.
Manufacturing, is it more successful in the Western Cape than in other provinces in the country, and if so, why?
Manufacturing across South Africa contributes just under 13% to our GDP. In the Western Cape, it is the second largest sector after financial services. So in terms of the Western Cape, that proportion is 14% of the total manufacturing output in South Africa.
Is it bigger than other provinces?
Well, Gauteng is first and Western Cape sits second.
How do we get more investment into manufacturing in South Africa? It's almost a no-brainer that we have to start making stuff if we are going to get the kind of prosperity or the kind of growth that our economy needs.
Absolutely. Essentially, we've got to work on manufacturing and putting in some instances, put the consumer cart before the manufacturing horse. So in general, it's a collaboration across the board between public and private sector, and within the public sector across different ministries as well, so that we can work together and really act and not talk, identify projects, identify the opportunities and make them happen.
Employment, that's one of the key concerns that we have in South Africa. We've got above 25% unemployed people. Especially young people. What were the outcomes with regards to creating opportunities for young people at this indaba?
Well, manufacturing in general has a very high multiplier effect in terms of job creation. And certainly there are different programs, CSR, for example, taking trainee programs, and it's certainly an area where jobs, number one, can be created, and number two, upskilling can take place. So it's a very important sector for that.
What do we lack right now? What did you identify as the key areas that we're lacking as South Africa right now?
We need better collaboration, and we need better consistency in terms of programs and plans. Energy, lack of energy supply is one issue, but if we know when the lack of supply is going to take place, we can plan around that, for example. So better coordination in terms of planning, better collaboration, better working together.
Going forward, what's going to be there shouldn't be such a thing, the magic pill that's going to make us grow the manufacturing sector, not just in the Western Cape, but nationwide?
Well, exports into Africa are certainly something that's being looked at the moment. We've got a lot of skills within what we do, mining sector, for example. Why are we not manufacturing more mining equipment for exports across our borders? So that's certainly one growth area that we're looking at.
Africa, it's a no-brainer. We've got 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies just across our borders, really, in the world. That is happening there right now. But thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us today. Philippa Rodseth is the Executive Director of the Manufacturing Circle here in South Africa. We're talking about the Manufacturing Indaba that was held in the Western Cape just now. Now, as the Department of Water and Sanitation will brief the Portfolio Committee in Parliament about the status of the drought in this country later today, Johannesburg has been the latest area to be hit by water restrictions as the current heat wave has also worsened the situation. Many have taken to Twitter about this and use the hashtag #SaveWater. Let's look at what people are saying about this. It's very concerning to everybody, and the outlook for the rest of the week is very hot and not really very good now. Tersha Kutser says, which people will start saving water by not using the sprinkle? You can always grow grass again. We can't get water again, says. Then Jolene Mulder says, Joburg Water, Corner North and Ruth Roads, Hyde Park, Dunkeld, water leak into Jan Smuts Roads. Hurry, let's save each drop, says Jolene Mulder. Grizel says, people still watering gardens in Johannesburg. As far as you see, nobody worried about the shortage of water until there is nothing left. Yes, please, do not do not use the hose pipe at all. Jan Stein talks about, I'm confused. We are being asked by our municipalities to save water. Reported a water leak 3 days ago, and it's still not fixed. Wow, that is a concern. We all need to chip in. We all need to do something to help save water. Now we move on to something a little bit different, but quite unique. A cell phone application linked to a mobile device to check on the development on a fetus, sugar and blood levels of a pregnant woman has been launched by Vodacom and the Department of Health here in South Africa. The company is now in talks with the provincial government to have this device installed in local clinics across the province. Pregnant women will no longer stand in long queues at hospitals for their checkups. Now, for more on this, we are joined by Vuyani Jarana, the Chief Executive Officer for Vodacom Business. Very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and good morning to the viewers.
It's a very interesting app, landmark one also, almost. Tell us about how this app is going to work.
Well, from Vodacom point of view, I've always looked at the healthcare and the challenges the country faces and looked at how mobile technology can enhance the delivery of healthcare and improve health outcomes. Yeah. One of the things that we've done, we've pulled together an ecosystem of partners. We have developed patented solutions. So in hearing screening, in monitoring of the babies, that is the fetus, if you like, as well as more the blood pressure monitoring for patients, as well as the cardiovascular kind of monitoring. So we are focused on building an ecosystem of mobile health and telemedicine solutions, which will shift healthcare from largely being premised on hospitals and doctors' premises to be able to deliver at home and anywhere where the patient is, but with the right clinical professionals providing the technical support.
Quite often it's rural communities that are most at risk and poorer families, poorer women. With this kind of app, you'd need an education process. What kind of process are you going to embark on to detangle the use of this app to the disadvantage for that matter?
I think the fortunate thing is that South Africa is investing in health programs with community health workers. However, today those health workers needs to be given the right technology that's simpler, that is able to help them capture vital signs, which will be analyzed by the medical professional, the clinical professional at the back. Now, what our solutions provide is the opportunity for the community health worker, as well as the nurse in a remote clinic in a rural area, to be able to administer and monitor the condition of the patient, whether it's a pregnant mother or it's just a child who needs hair screening at the school, but with the right tools that are much more cost-effective, affordable, mobile, but also you are able to access the advice and the insight of the medical professional. You must remember that South Africa has a challenge of shortage of doctors. Yeah. Now, coupled with the huge geography and a wide footprint that we have, being able to use mobility and simpler, smart technology to be able to capture this information and be able to have it analyzed centrally will help the healthcare system improve health outcomes significantly.
When are we launching this this app? When does it start working?
We launched the innovation at GovTech about 2 weeks ago. We did further launch in East London at the ICT Summit. So at the moment we are engaging government in provinces and nationally so that they can see the benefits of the technology. It's beyond an app. It's a number of things that we are doing. The South Africans will remember that the Schools Health Policy of 2012 calls for basic screening of kids at school. One of the things that, as Vodacom, we always look at is how do we make sure that government can implement its policy cost-effectively. So the hearing screening, you no longer need the big boots and so on. You are able to use the mobile device to deliver that. So it should scale. We have launched it already. We're working with government to see how we can actually make it more accessible to many South Africans.
Where will that accessibility be? Where will you make it easily available? Where should people be on the lookout for?
Our view is that clinics in the township, in the rural communities, private doctors themselves can be able to use the technology. So we should see this being deployed. The community health workers should be empowered and enabled with these devices so that what they capture as vital signs in a family is not captured on paper, is captured on digital form so as to reduce the possibility of an error in terms of capturing. But also, most importantly, the doctor who will see this data will be able to call up the patient early and say, there's a high-risk pregnancy, therefore call them up to come to the hospital. Therefore, you improve the whole healthcare, the cost of delivering healthcare by being proactive.
Well, I thank you for joining us. It's a wonderful initiative and I wish you all the success with it. That's Mr. Vuyani Jarana. He's the Chief Executive Officer for Vodacom Business.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to take a short commercial break now. See you shortly.
In Africa, mobile devices are tools to make payments, browse the internet, and keep governments in check with social media forums.
It's given an average African too much power in their hands.
And tech creativity is solving some of the continent's problems.
Everything is internet driven.
And on Network, we tell you how Africans are using technology and social media in their everyday lives.
Join Siphumelele Zondi on Network every Sunday at 19:30 CAT.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom now. It's often said it takes a village to raise a child, but that's not the case for thousands of children who are abandoned here in South Africa. Child Welfare South Africa estimated that more than 3,500 babies were abandoned in the country in 2010, and according to the Gauteng MEC, Kedani Matlangu, a total of 374 babies were abandoned in Gauteng hospitals over the past 3 months. Currently, 2 million children could benefit from adoption, but only 0.2% of adoptable children are actually being adopted. Now, joining us in studio to talk about this is Dee Blackie, who is child protection activist and a researcher. Very good morning to you. Dee, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
The numbers are a little bit alarming, but is it even worse than what we see?
My thinking is that it probably is. Unfortunately, government hasn't chosen to do research on the issue of child abandonment, despite a lot of interest and a lot of pressure being placed on them for the past 5 or so years. I think what's very worrying is these statistics that you've talked about now refer to the children who actually are alive.
Yeah.
There's also the statistics where the children have actually died. And recently what we've discovered is that the police are not even counting abandoned children that are found. They're referring to them not as murders, but rather as inquests. The morgues are referring to them as stillbirths. But stillbirths are not seen as a medical, as murder in hospitals. So therefore the children being sent to the morgues that are dead are not stillbirths. They are in fact our abandoned children. And those numbers are far higher.
These numbers, are they is only babies or are they toddlers? Yeah, older children being abandoned as well? And how, what does that look like?
Again, without research, it's really difficult for us to be able to estimate that. In research I did as part of my master's thesis, I looked at newspaper articles referring to abandonment over a period of about 4 years. And about 90% of those children that I researched were under the age of a year, and about 65% of them were newborns. So the majority are newborns, and the majority of them are being abandoned in unsafe spaces.
Is it mostly young mothers who abandon their children, and is there education that could change the game maybe?
Again, research is lacking, but certainly when you talk to child protection experts, people who talk to these women when these women are caught, and also when for abandoning their baby, and also when they, they hand their babies over at various places. They do tend to be younger. There certainly are a lot of young teenage girls. You must remember in South Africa, you can have an abortion at any age, but you can only legally put your child up for adoption when you are 18 years or older. Up until that point, you need to get the legal permission of your parents, and that's obviously what they're trying to avoid. So yes, they are generally younger. The other concern is that with the new visa regulations, the strictness around visa regulations, it's impossible for somebody who does not have South African citizenship to place their child into the formal child protection system. And therefore, abandonment becomes a survival strategy.
You say the research is lacking, but do you see an increase in this trend?
Again, until such time as government chooses to actually put these statistics, and we believe government does have these statistics, until they choose to put these on the table from the police, from the morgues, from the child protection organizations, from the education departments and so on. These are all the responsible departments. We can't tell you exactly. But if you talk to child protection experts and advocates around the country, they will tell you that child protection is increasing, and nothing has been done to stem the tide. To support these young women making these survival decisions.
Sex education. What's the role of sex education within this quagmire?
I mean, sex education has a role to play, and certainly as in support of the National Adoption Coalition of South Africa, I've developed a number of sex education programs. There's one called Courage Child Protection, and we certainly do that. But one of the biggest challenges in this country is that young girls are not protected. They don't feel safe and secure. Globally, it's been proved that young girls who feel safe and secure do not fall pregnant. And in this country, we have massive problems with teenage pregnancy. We know that nearly 180,000 young girls fell pregnant last year, and over 2,000 of those were only at the age of 13 years of age. So we have major issues around protecting young girls in our societies, either before they fall pregnant or after they fall pregnant. As the National Adoption Coalition, we've started a campaign called Choose to Care. It's a pro bono campaign, but we've helped more than 1,000 young girls since we launched in June this year with direct queries. So,
the stats don't look good and the story's certainly not very good, but let's hope that we can all chip in and make it better. Dee Blackie is a child protection activist and researcher. We're talking about the high numbers of babies that are abandoned in South Africa. It's certainly very concerning. Around 3,500, it looks around that number per year, and the sad reality of it is that it could be much higher. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Now let's go to our Facebook page. Have a look here what's happening on Newsroom's Facebook page today. The Chief Operating Officer of Rand Water Sipho Mosai is urging South Africans to use water wisely. This is many parts of the country experiencing drought. Then, Burundi's political violence threatens to spiral into an ethnic or regional conflict, but the United Nations is less equipped to deal with it than it was in Rwanda before the genocide there of 1994. And Britain's Prime Minister appealed to doubters at home and in other EU capitals yesterday to back his attempt to reform the 28-member bloc as a chance to boost prosperity rather than write it off as mission impossible, as some people have called it. That's our Facebook page. Just put in SABC Newsroom in the search bar on Facebook. Will pop up, like the page, and of course we'll send you in your feed all the latest updates. Now, I'm In isn't a book on how to build your own business, but rather one that offers insights into the thinking and experiences of people who have built businesses, have seen them fail, and have seen them shoot the lights out. It's essential advice for all entrepreneurs. Now, Gil Oved, Lebo Gugunzulo, Polo Lateka, Vinnie Lingham, and Vusi Temekwayo, all of them entrepreneurs, took on the role of the dragons in the first South African season of the popular television reality show Dragon's Den. Now, to talk to us about the book, there you see the book, well, we are joined by the CEO of the Creative Council and author, Gil himself. Good morning to you, Gil. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Great book it is, a great idea, a great initiative. Yeah. Tell us about the motivation, firstly, behind this.
Okay, well, I mean, on the Dragon's Den show, we saw a whole lot of entrepreneurs, really promising, daring, young, hungry entrepreneurs with all the passion. But what we found is that they lacked access to mentorship, to guidance, to input, to advice, to funding. They weren't sure how to present. They weren't sure about their numbers and how to talk the language of numbers. Lots of, like a gap, basically, that we needed to fill. And on the show, whenever we, as dragons, make a decision, we have to say, look, you know, for this reason and that reason, unfortunately, I'm out. And what happened was, when the show came on, a lot of people were tweeting and going crazy, saying, well, if these are all the reasons you're out, what would make you go in? So we decided we're going to put a book together and call it, and for all these reasons, I'm in.
I'm in, it's fantastic. South Africa, is it difficult to start a business here for a young person? Are there many barriers? Are the banks a problem, for instance?
There are many barriers. It's very difficult to start a business in South Africa. I'm very critical of business, private enterprise, not supporting entrepreneurs sufficiently. And I think initiatives like these are few and far between. We need to do a lot more to inspire, mentor, guide, and give funding to hungry entrepreneurs in South Africa, because the will is there and the passion's there, but there is still a gap. It's tough out there. And you look at other countries like Canada, the States, Israel, London, you go there and they've got incubation hubs. They've got funders, they've got scale, they've got all these things, and we need to build that still.
Who's this book for? I'm told that South Africans don't read. Who's this book for? Who's going to read it?
Well, firstly, I'd like to challenge that. But the book is created in a coffee table fashion. Yeah. It's highly visual. There are lots of pictures and diagrams and really cool stuff. It's made for easy reading, and it's for anyone who's either an entrepreneur, wannabe, or potential, or an intrapreneur. It's anyone who wants to make a difference and be a master of the destiny. And of course, all the proceeds of the book, everything that we make, all go to charity, an entrepreneurial charity. So this is the least entrepreneurial thing I've ever done.
Gil, books don't make money. That's why I haven't written one. Anyhow, I want to ask you about encouraging young people in South Africa to be entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Yes. Listen, this is the land of opportunity. I started with relative nothing. And now we were able to build a big business. And it was with determination and passion and a love for people and for understanding the importance of job creation. Yep. There are lots of young entrepreneurs out there who just have to go and make it happen. Just do it. You know, a lot of people ask me, what do I need? You need an idea. It doesn't have to be the best idea in the world. Even Facebook wasn't Facebook when it started. It was a way of meeting girls in varsity. And look at it now.
That's true.
So you just need to have an idea. And then go and make it happen.
What's the most important attribute you need to have to be successful? Is it as simple as saying attitude is everything?
I call it passion-fueled optimism. That's my mantra.
Passion-fueled optimism.
Yeah.
You got a minute to tell me what this is.
Oh, it's two elements. Okay, so firstly, as an entrepreneur, you need to be an optimist.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs are very bad realists.
Yeah.
Because if you're a realist, you'll realize all the reason why you shouldn't go into a business, and you probably won't do it.
Yeah.
As an optimist, you see things as a bit more rosy than they really are, and when you hit the obstacles, you find ways around them. That's the optimism part. And then passion, because passion will allow you to get through lots of flaws in your understanding of business. Passion-fueled optimism.
Passion, they say passion masks stupidity.
It certainly has in my case.
Gil, I love the way that, I love the energy you brought to the book. It's an amazing book. I mean, if you're looking to start a business, actually all South Africans should read this book. I tell you why, because this is the future. This is how we're going to rebuild or build South Africa's economy. This is how we're going to get to the 5% economic growth that we so need in order for everyone in South Africa to live that better life that we ask about. Gil, I would like to invite you back occasionally to come and talk to us about entrepreneurship. But I'm going to ask our producer to set that up with you. Thank you for joining us today. It's wonderful. It's exactly the kind of thing that South Africa needs. The other thing, of course, we need is rain. Now, South Africans in the interior have been warned of an extremely hot and dry week ahead. The Weather Service has issued a warning of persistently high temperatures here in Gauteng, Limpopo, Mpumalanga and the Northwest Province. Temperatures in some areas will soar above 40 degrees Celsius, and that, I can tell you, is in the shade. The real temperature will be well above 50, so it will be scorching hot. Drink lots of water, stay out of the sun in the middle of the day, all the kinds of things you should do. Don't leave your animals in the car or your children for that matter. Now, Tsietse Munari is with us here to tell us that it's not going to rain this week, or next week, or until March for that matter, Tsietse.
Or next year, who knows?
Tsietse, give us some good news. On the map there, where must the moisture come from? From the south. And why isn't it coming from the south? What happened to all the cold fronts that hit Cape Town all the time?
We have run dry, man. There's an El Nino. It's taken all the cold fronts away. It's just bringing hot and dry conditions. Yeah, that's it. Blowing
Who's
hot,
this El Nino, the little child that you talk
other
about?
people think it's somebody called something Torres, but I
it was a football player. So
Yeah,
a football player has taken the rain.
Yeah, he's taking the rain. He's taking all the way to Spain with him. Yeah.
Well,
what can we do, man?
Well, Tsietse, I'm tired. This theme is getting tired. I'm tired of begging you for rain. I think from now on you're going to have to come and just say a prayer. Just come and say a prayer because we know what the outlook is like.
Yeah, that's basically the story. I mean, I really need to get everything, my church clothing, everything ready, and a Bible. Yeah, that's what we need. And we need a rain dance. Maybe you could demonstrate for us a bit later on.
I'll try. I'll certainly, if my nation needs me to dance, I will dance. But I can tell you look pretty good and you're dressed for church. I mean, even in my church, you're allowed in that outfit.
That's good to hear. Can I give the weather now?
Please.
No. Okay. Thank you so much, Evan. Hello there, welcome from the weather desk. So, this satellite image indicates that there's good news for the central part of Africa, but not so great for the southern part of Africa, as still dry conditions and clear weather is expected along those parts there. There it is, there's a small chance of rain. I mean, 30% chance of rain is really, really tiny. There isn't much that you can expect. Partly cloudy skies still here teasing us, making us believe that there might be rain. But in fact, there's actually nothing coming up for the next couple of days. So let's really hope something builds up and we get some showers, especially towards KwaZulu-Natal. It's also one of the provinces that has been classified under due stress because of the drought conditions. But the good news is, there's a good chance of rain for tomorrow towards the Eastern Cape as well as over KwaZulu-Natal. Let's hope it will move all the way towards the central part and also cover some of the western regions. This is basically the big thing that we've been worried about is the extremely high fire danger that we're expecting. This red shade here indicating possibilities of veld fires because of the dry conditions, because of high temperatures, the heat wave. Yes, temperatures over some parts such as Kukuza will go as high as 40 degrees. Lephalale and Tabazimbi, maybe even 42 degrees. It's going to be quite hot. Here's the rest of South Africa. Johannesburg at 36, 38 towards Mafikeng, and then Vryburg reaching a maximum of 41 degrees. So for all those who are going to be in Klebebe, do expect hot conditions.
But slightly cooler towards Alexander Bay, 22, 23 for Springbok, and along the West Coast District, in fact, in towards the Western Cape as well, temperatures are looking a lot better. The Eastern Cape as well, let me move out of your shot. It's looking pretty good there. We're expecting rain, temperatures into the lower 20s, nice and cool weather. So it's not all doom and gloom for the rest of the country. But over our neighboring countries as well, do expect hot conditions for Mariental, 38. You know, a lot of people say if you're in Namibia, you're used to the hot conditions, but that's not the case. We actually need a relief. We need a bit of change. We need temperatures to drop for places such as Tumep, as well as over Grootfontein. Look at Rundu as well. 40 degrees, your maximum temperatures. Really hot weather is expected over the central parts of Southern Africa. 39 towards Hansi, Maun, 44 degrees. Sunny skies and those upper 30s and lower 40s are expected towards Francistown and the northern parts of Zimbabwe as well. Kariba 39, Bindura just around the 33 degrees. Going towards Mozambique, you see also hot conditions are expected along these parts with sunny skies right across the country. Chimoya 36, 42 for Tete, upper 20s for Lichinga. Hot weather coming in towards Maputo as well as over Shai-Shai, with a maximum of 39 degrees. No chance of rain now for Madagascar, which was our last hope, in fact, where we saw some rain, but now it's all gone. Clear conditions are expected here. Majanga drops to 33. Mainterano is at 32 degrees. The islands are also going to be a bit hot. 31 for Moroni. Sunny skies are expected here. Dry weather persisting all over the Moroni Islands, as well as over the Comoros Islands, rather, as well as over the Seychelles. Possibilities of rain towards Praslin, as well as places such as St. Denis and Port Louis. That's all I leave it for the weather for now, but do stay around here on SABC News. There'll be more weather updates.
Get all the latest news from the SABC's online news services on our website. Breaking news and in-depth coverage of everything from business, sports to politics and lifestyle. Catch the top news clips and watch live streaming of major news events on the SABC News YouTube channel whenever. Stay connected on the SABC News Facebook page and have your say on news that matters to you. And for the latest headlines and live updates from our reporters, follow us on Twitter. SABC Digital News, anytime, anywhere.
In Africa, mobile devices are tools to make payments, browse the internet, and keep governments in check with social media forums.
It's given an average African too much power in their hands.
And tech creativity is solving some of the continent's problems.
Everything is internet driven.
And on Network, we tell you how Africans are using technology and social media in their everyday lives.
Join Siphumelele Zondi on Network every Sunday at 19:30 CAT.
Health Talk, your show on health practice.
The people being empowered with knowledge so that they can change their behavior and reduce their risk of being sick.
How serious is stress at work?
If we don't address workplace stress, that negative stress, then it can lead to burnout and it can lead to depression.
How does absentees affect companies?
The one that's really problematic for employers is the one that is unscheduled.
How can companies organize their wellness program?
Health promotion mustn't just be a one-size-fits-all type of approach. It must be customized based on understanding of the unique needs of that particular organization.
For health tips that will help you to adopt healthy living with Dr. Sillo Mutawung on Health Talk every Saturday.
Your destiny is not determined by the township you come from.
The one place we will find movers and shakers is in the township. It's just that they're diamonds in the rough and some of them don't even know it.
Being young with no experience in business is a challenge that Bulelani took upon himself.
I was motivated by the prayer. I was motivated by the love.
To be a novice in business was tough, but experience made him a businessman of note.
It took me 7 years to make my first million. I've got all the scars to prove that I started with nothing.
A journey well traveled.
For me, that is the one major thing. The ability to touch other people's lives. Nothing goes beyond that.
Join your host Puleng Mulabati on Bopilong every Saturday at 5:30 p.m.
It's 10:00 hours Central Africa time on this Wednesday, the 11th of the 11th, 2015. Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the second hour. This is Newsroom. I'm Elvis Preston, and I'll be with you until 12 o'clock. You have to stay with us as we broadcast live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. But first, let's take a look at all the news headlines. Drought and water shortage to come under the spotlight at the Portfolio Committee on Water and Sanitation in Parliament. Provincial police commissioners to know their fate no later than this afternoon for allegedly misleading Parliament. And sentencing procedures are currently underway in the trial of 8 former policemen convicted of murdering the Mozambican migrant Mido Marcia. That's all coming up in your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening in the sports news. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Elvis, and a hearty good morning to everybody at home as well. And in the sports today, we've got this lined up for you. The head of RUSADA, the Russian anti-doping agency, closes the Moscow anti-doping lab at the center of the scandal that has rocked the athletics world. The joint Belgian-Dutch 2018 World Cup bid seeks advice and compensation for almost $11 million from FIFA. Also, the Bafana arrive in Luanda, Angola, ahead of their crucial 2018 World Cup qualifier against Os Palancas Negras. That, in a nutshell, is what we've got for you in the sports. I'll also be chatting to Mark Omar to carry forward that IWF scandal story that's hit the entire world. Make sure you stick around for that 10:20. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you so much, Kendall. He will be back later with more. Now, in financial news, the Reserve Bank has come under further pressure to hike the interest rate when it meets next week, following the Rand's latest plunge. The Rand continued its record-breaking slide yesterday when it briefly hit a new all-time low at 14.37 to the dollar. Now, the Rand is facing a double body blow. Poor data out of China affects emerging markets like our own that rely on the Chinese market, and the dollar has been soaring given expectations that the U.S. Federal Reserve will hike rates in December. Following that revelation, Zimbabwe's retailers are rejecting the Rand as the value of South Africa's currency continues to slide. But economists in Zimbabwe don't believe that the South African Rand will cease to be used in Zimbabwe, though demand for it is declining. This, as the value of our currency depreciates against the US dollar. The Bank Association of Zimbabwe says the use of the US dollar has increased by as much as 10% as a result of the weakening Rand. The Rand was introduced as legal tender in 2009 alongside the US dollar, the British pound and the Botswana pula when Zimbabwe abandoned its worthless currency at the time. SABC correspondent in Zimbabwe, Shangai Nyoka, joins us now from Harare via Skype. Very good morning to you, Shangai. And can you tell us, why do you think that retailers in Zimbabwe have started to reject the South African currency?
Well, good morning to you, Elvis. We spoke to some of those retailers, especially vendors, yesterday, and essentially what they're saying As you know, Zimbabwe is very close in terms of trade with South Africa. At least 60% of the goods that are imported into the country are coming from South Africa. And so for a time, the South African rand was very popular. But given the slide over the last few months or so, people are saying that holding on to the South African rand is increasing their loss. Because of the rapid depreciation of the rand, or the fact that they can't be certain that it'll be worth what they bought it for. And so, as you said, there's a 10% increase in the use of the US dollars on the streets. They've stopped accepting the rand coins altogether because of the depreciation of the rand, and so really at this point it was a very popular currency, but not so much anymore as a result of its depreciation.
Now the Confederation of the Zimbabwean Retailers saying that it's against the law for businesses to reject the rand, whereas their members are still practicing it. Why?
Well, in most cases, what we've seen is that your large retailers are still accepting the rand at a very much a higher rate, but the rand coins are not being accepted. The Retailers Association position is that this is legal tender. Zimbabwe has a basket of currencies. It expanded those currencies to 9 to include the Chinese yuan, the Japanese yen, the Indian rupee, as well as a basket of other currencies, including the European Union currency. And its point is that as long as it is legal, as long as these currencies are legal tender, businesses are required to accept them and then to change them at the bank. But clearly on the ground, we're seeing with ice cream vendors, for example, and major ice cream companies, they are simply not accepting rands on the street.
Now, Zimbabwe share borders with us here in South Africa. How is this recent situation going to affect people on the ground and Zimbabweans living and working in South Africa?
Well, over the last 6 years or so, you'll find that the borders or the regions that border South Africa have tended to use the rand a lot more than the northern regions of the country. But what the Bankers Association is saying is that these regions still use the rand, even though in those areas it's declining as well. But what it means for Zimbabweans traveling to Zimbabwe is that they can no longer use the rand as widely as they used to, that they need to convert the money to US dollars in case the rand is not accepted where they want to use it.
And why does economists still believe that it will not be ceased to be used, the rand that is in the country?
No, certainly it won't. And the Bankers Association has made the point that rand accounts, even though the use of them is in decline, the rand accounts still remain open. As I mentioned earlier, Zimbabwe is, or South Africa, Zimbabwe's largest trading partner. It imports 60% of goods from South Africa, exports 50% of its goods to South Africa. So really at this stage, it remains legal tender, even though many of the people on the street are rejecting it. Business will still want to keep these accounts open and still keep using the rand for purposes of trading with South Africa.
And the Zimbabwe economy is operating without their own currency as legal tender. And how is the economy currently doing? What does the economist say? Is there a buzz within the economy?
Well, there's a global decline. You yourself were talking about what's happening in South Africa, and Zimbabwe has not been immune to this, especially given the fact that the rand is weakening and the US dollar remains the base currency. And so essentially it reduces Zimbabwe's competitiveness against South Africa. South African goods are cheaper to procure. South African goods are cheaper to produce as a result of the weakening rand. So really this is one of the crises that Zimbabwe is facing as a result of the fact that it's decided to base its currency on the US dollar, or base its economy on the US dollar.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Shingai Nyoka, our correspondent in Harare, Zimbabwe, for your time. Now, sentencing procedures here at home in the trial of the former policeman accused of dragging and killing the Mozambican taxi driver Mido Marcia has begun at the North Gauteng High Court. The 8 men were found guilty of murder in August. Masia was dragged in full public view after a minor traffic violation. He was later found dead in police holding cells at the Davidton police station, lying in a pool of blood. A post-mortem report revealed that the 25-year-old had been severely assaulted. He died from multiple injuries and lack of oxygen. The court found that all former policemen had a hand in his killing and convicted them of murder. Their lawyers will now have to convince the court why they should not be given a harsher sentence, while the state is expected to call for a lengthier jail term. They face anything from 15 years to life imprisonment. Now, in a short while, we'll go to our reporter who was at courtside, Mangoban Kunu, to give us an update as to what is happening there. Meanwhile, the Department of Water and Sanitation will brief the Portfolio Committee in Parliament about the status of the drought in South Africa later today. The department is expected to reveal its strategies and interventions in respect of the drought and the disbursement of relief of provinces. This comes as the country faces a burgeoning water challenge that has depleted many municipalities and the agriculture sector since last year. So far, KwaZulu-Natal and the Free State have been declared drought disaster areas. Well, it seems our reporter, Mangoban Kunu, is covering the court proceedings there. He's ready for us now as we cross to him live. A very good morning to you, Mangoba. Can you tell us what has happened so far in court today?
Well, Elvis, the final arguments with regards to sentencing have just been concluded here at the North Gauteng High Court a short while ago. They lasted a mere 45 minutes, which was totally unexpected, as it was earlier predicted that they could last for about a day or so. So it certainly took everybody by surprise with the defense and the state wrapping up their arguments. Both of them have basically given the court their arguments to say which is the suitable punishment that the 8 former policemen should be given. The defense was first on the stand arguing that they should be given a lighter sentence, and some of the mitigating factors that they really gave to court was the fact that firstly they are first-time offenders, and that these police officers has served the public well, and that they served well as policemen before this incident happened, and therefore the court should show some sort of mercy to them. They also argued that they did not intend to kill Mido Masia that day, and that it was not part of their plan that day to actually go and drag somebody and even kill somebody. So saying that they did not foresee what happened there in a flight, and therefore saying that they should be shown mercy by the court. They have also argued that the former policemen have also been punished for their crime already, as we know that they were suspended before this, and that they basically were out of a job after committing this incident. So they're saying that the court should show some mercy and consider their circumstances in reaching its final decision. And the state was then the second to follow to give its arguments to the court, but surprisingly did not call for a life sentence, instead saying that it wants a harsh sentence that will act as a deterrent to other policemen who intend to break the law. It said that it wants a sentence that will send a clear message to the other policemen, and that actually it should also speak to society to say that the actions of the policemen are totally not acceptable, saying that they actually painted the image of the police negatively, and therefore it should be condemned in the strongest sense. What the state is basically asked for is that they should not be given a life sentence, and that instead they should be given a harsh sentence. They're saying that what they did not show in this matter is that they did not show any remorse for their actions, and therefore they did not deserve the court's mercy. They're saying that the court should give them a harsh sentence. We know that they could face anything from 15 years to life imprisonment, but already the state saying that they do not want a life sentence for these 8 former policemen. So anything from 15 years, we're expecting the judge to deliver his verdict at about 10:30 this morning. At this stage, court has been adjourned.
Ngoba, thank you so much for that update, and we'll come back to you to find out what is the latest there. Desmond Ngoma Kunu, our reporter on the scene there. We'll cross to him live later. Parliament's Portfolio Committee says that the release of a press release by SAPS management in support for the suspended National Police Commissioner Ria Piecha was aimed at putting pressure on President Jacob Zuma. The committee is releasing its draft report after an inquiry on whether the SAPS management were truthful in their dealings with him. SAPS management released a statement in August, shortly after the Farnham Commission's recommendations were made public, in which they pledged support to Piega. The committee has found that this was aimed at putting public pressure on Zuma, who had by that time already asked Piega to provide reasons why she should stay in her position. The Farnham Commission recommended that Piega's fitness to hold office should be investigated. Now, President Jacob Zuma has wrapped up his state visit to Germany, which is being hailed a success. The President and the German Chancellor Angela Merkel discussed a range of issues, including trade and investment, the refugee crisis and climate change. Jack Parrock reports from Berlin.
Two world leaders meeting to discuss their relations and the global issues both South Africa and Germany are facing. The Germans rolled out the red carpet for the president with a military escort in attendance. A large South African business delegation joined President Zuma on his state visit here to Berlin. They're pressing for Germany to grow business ties with small and medium-sized businesses.
And there's a greater enthusiasm here, and a greater enthusiasm on our side as well, to grow the economy. On very specific issues, the issues of infrastructure, the issues of helping us to augment what we are doing in terms of skills development, particularly of our youth, given the fact that it is the empowerment of people that helps the economies to grow.
There are more than 600 German companies in South Africa supporting well over 100,000 jobs, mainly in the car industry. But there has been significant investment from other countries into South Africa as well in recent years.
There is also concern that for some years now, South Africa has turned to the east, to China and Russia, possibly to the detriment of relations with its more traditional partners in Western Europe.
It was a flying trip, with the president heading back to South Africa less than 48 hours after arriving here. This state visit ends with South Africa and Germany agreeing to deepen political and trade relations. German Chancellor Angela Merkel and South African President Jacob Zuma will be looking to ensure that the agreements they've made here come to fruition in the future. Jack Parrock, SABC News, Berlin.
Health Talk looks into the increase of suicide and symptoms leading to suicide.
The death wish grows when you go into depression after a lot of stress.
And often when we talk about suicide, we don't talk about a person wanting to stop living, but rather wanting to stop living in pain.
After losing everything in life that lead you to no options but suicide.
I had that spirit of fear in me to say, don't even face tomorrow.
After being overwhelmed with stress and trauma, it becomes difficult to have self-control.
People learning tools and skills that will practically enable them to meet these challenges.
In trying times, never be alone. Reach out for help to a better solution.
Support should be done by a counsellor or psychologist, where you're able to speak about how you're feeling in a safe, accepting, non-judgmental space.
For all your health tips, join Dr. Sello Mutawung every Saturday from 9 till 10.
Opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi says that although she cannot be chosen as president, she would lead the country anyway. Speaking in a first interview since Sunday's vote, Suu Kyi said that she cannot be chosen as president because the constitution blocks people with foreign offspring from holding the post. Now, early results point to a sweeping victory for her National League for Democracy, but final official results will not be known for days. Now, for more on this, we are joined here in studio by Graham Bailey, the executive member of the Free Burma campaign. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Good morning, Elvis.
Now, Mr. Bailey, what does this election victory mean for the people of Myanmar?
I think the election victory
unanimously brings to the people of Burma freedom and democracy, hopefully, democracy, after 50 years of enormous brutality, economic deprivation, after a series of disastrous military governments.
Now, the military, will they accept this victory?
Isn't that the $1,000 question?
Correct.
In 1990, we had a replay of what we've just seen this weekend. Historically, there were uprisings in 1988. The students demonstrated. The military were called out, and the 3,000 students, members of the public, shot down in the streets. And I think it maybe it's good to remember this. The brutality of the military was such that they even shot into the Rangoon General Hospital, killing doctors and nurses who were attending to the wounded. In 2007, we saw the Saffron Revolution, the Buddhist monks protesting quietly in the streets. The military were called out, and they shot down monks. Unheard of. You may not even lay a hand on a monk in Burma. This is the legacy of the military government. In 1990, thinking that the country had been cowed, that the students were scared of the military, they held elections. They were confident they were going to win. The NLD won 82% of the parliamentary seats, and the government party won 11 or 12%. It's a replay of what we've just seen this weekend. The military had promised in 2000 and 1990 that they would honor the elections. That promise proved to be happening yet. It's proved to be absolutely worthless. The constitution which they've developed since then is the word gerrymandered. Is that okay? I can use that. Heavily gerrymandered. 25% of the parliamentary seats are reserved for the military. Under the constitution, you mentioned Section 59F, which prevents Aung San Suu Kyi from being president. They're scared of her. They don't want her to be president.
Now, 82% suggests that it's a majority. If that is a majority, or a two-thirds majority, would that be able to give the opposition the opportunity to bring that much-needed change that Myanmar actually needs?
It depends on what you mean by change. Under the present constitution, and the so-called civilian government, they really are only generals who have taken off the uniform and put on suits and ties. They're all mostly former generals. They have their own agenda. They've carefully structured the constitution to allow them to retain control of the country despite the elections. They retain the three key portfolios. Former generals and their cronies control the key sectors of the economy. The head of the defense force is not subject to any controls by the head of government.
Just briefly, Mr. Bailey, because we haven't got much time, how do you think this will play out?
I would like to think that sanity will prevail, that the generals in Burma will realize, as we have seen in the freedom we achieved in this country, where a repressive government, finally led by de Klerk, realized that they had to work together. They could no longer keep people under the boot. I'm hoping the military have realized that for the good of Burma, they have to work with the NLD or the new government to bring freedom and democracy and economic prosperity to the people of Burma.
Mr. Bailey, thank you so much for coming through. That was Graham Bailey, the executive member of the Free Burma campaign. And as you heard there, of course, we await with bated breath what will happen next. Right now, Kendall Makamate is standing by with your sports news.
Thank you very much, Elvis. A hearty good morning to you. I am Kendall Mahamat, and I've got your sports on Newsroom. Our very first and top story. The acting president of the Russian Athletics Federation, Vadim Zlechilov, has rejected the World Anti-Doping Agency accusations of doping violations and expressed hope that Russian athletes would not be banned from participating in the upcoming Olympic Games and the World Cup. Zalekinok dismissed the Commission's accusations and said the ban, if introduced, would also punish athletes who've never doped. Julia Lubyova reports.
The Russian anti-doping agency has until 18th of November to explain wrongdoings exposed in the damning report by the World Anti-Doping Agency. But the agency's head insists the organization is within WADA standards and will cooperate with the anti-doping authorities.
I believe that problems obviously exist, but Russia is on the path to clear its name and change. This is a trend recently. According to objective facts, and we use statistics of changes, Russian anti-doping operates totally in accordance with the criteria and fights doping effectively enough.
According to the World Anti-Doping Agency, Russian athletes committed a total of 225 offences in 2013, which is about 12% of all violations globally. The Russian Anti-Doping Agency admits there must be changes. Many Russian athletes are household names, and it appears that at least Russians are willing to give them the benefit of the doubt.
I think that there's been noise for quite a while now. How will this end? I think it'll be sad if it's all confirmed. We have to wait for the official results.
I think we should take all this calmly. Sport is about sporting achievements rather than political ones. So our athletes should work, win medals, time will pass, and I think one way or another this will all calm down.
The story has received a lot of Russian media attention. Political motivation and an attempt to discredit Russia are some of the theories widely reported. Russia is a traditional powerhouse when it comes to sports, and Russian athletes are renowned around the world. So these allegations in the WADA reports could be harmful to Russian sport, especially in a run-up to the next Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro next summer. Julia Lubyova, SABC News, Moscow.
And so it is that calls for Russia to be banned from all athletics events increase in the wake of the release of that WADA report. This while Olympics chief Thomas Bach says he expects Russia to comply with doping regulations in time for its athletes to compete at next year's Rio Games. With me is Mark Omar, sports journalist. Good morning and welcome to Newsroom.
Thank you very much for inviting me here.
Mark, you've got some very interesting views on the matter.
That's
Please
true.
share.
Look, WADA has come up with a suggestion of collective punishment. That is out of line with the concept of protecting innocent athletes. About 5 to 10 Russians have been found wanting 4 years ago. WADA has clear regulations of how to deal with them. Russia is a country of over 200 million, and there are more than 500,000 athletes who are innocent. Right now, nominees for the IAAF World Athlete of the Year, there is a 400-meter hurdler who is a Russian. Must he also be punished because of this? So that was a mistake on the part of WADA. It's very wrong. And now the IAAF, headed by Sebastian Coe, has also done the wrong thing because they're only talking about banning Russia.
All right, now thank you very much. We've got lots more questions for you, which we're going to ask you shortly. Mark, I want to thank you very much for having come through and chatted to us. If you'll hold on a second, we've got a court to get to. Court proceedings, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing shortly. We'll be going through to court. There's some very heavy and weighty matters happening in the court of law.
Incalculable. This issue was dealt with in all the pre-sentence reports handed in as exhibits AA to HH. It is imperative that the impact of the deceased's death on his family has to be taken into account. See the State versus Machiji, 2011-1, SACR 40 SCA, paragraph 16. The personal circumstances of the accused are contained in the said pre-sentence reports. I deem it expedient to attach the said reports to this judgment. It includes the personal circumstances of the respective accused, their families, as well as a reference to the impact that the death of the deceased had on his family. The personal circumstances of the accused can be summarized as follows. They were members of the South African Police Force. All of them have good service records. None of them has any previous convictions. They have good family relations and dependents to care for. It was pointed out to me this morning that accused 8's health condition is not good. I was not informed about what his problem was. Apparently he was in hospital some time ago. The community depends on members of the police force for protection and safety. Rogue policemen, for obvious reasons, are unacceptable in society and cannot be tolerated. Although policemen are in many occasions subject to rude, provocative and aggressive behavior of members of the public, they are expected to conduct themselves in a proper and reasonable manner within the ambit of our laws. This includes that they have to respect the individual's rights entrenched in our Constitution. Of course, policemen are entitled to use reasonable force to effect lawful arrest. In this case, regrettably, that right was abused with dire consequences. It is so that, insofar as the initial arrest of the deceased is concerned, that only accused 1 and 2 were aware of the true facts. Both of them knew very well that the deceased's arrest was unlawful. Their wrongful conduct started with the decision to arrest the deceased. To that extent, the situation of accused 3 to 8 differs. On the probabilities, accused 3 to 8 were misled by accused 1 and 2 with words or conduct in accepting that the deceased was lawfully arrested. The wrongful conduct of accused 3 to 8 therefore commenced when the deceased, against standard rules and regulations, was attached to the police vehicle and then dragged off behind it. Thereafter, unfortunately for all the accused, the unlawful conduct continued up to the point where the deceased was fatally injured in the holding cell. In the matter of the State versus Molgas 2001-1 SACR 469 SCA, paragraph 25, the court remarked as follows, and I quote, "If the sentencing court, on consideration of circumstances of the particular case, is satisfied that they render the prescribed sentence unjust in that it would be disproportionate to the crime, the criminal and the needs of society, so that an injustice would be done by imposing that sentence, it is entitled to impose a lesser sentence," close quotation. The whole incident that fateful day lasted a few hours and got totally out of control. However, taking into account the circumstances of the case, I've arrived at the conclusion that life imprisonment would be disproportionate to the crime. This was conceded by the State, and it was argued by defense counsel. In my view, there are substantial and compelling circumstances justifying a deviation from that sentence. These circumstances are the following. 1, the problem started when the deceased became arrogant and aggressive when confronted with a traffic violation by accused numbers 1 and 2. It justifies the finding that the deceased's conduct in respect of accused 1 and 2 was clearly provocative. In respect of accused 3 to 8, it has to be found that on the probabilities they subjectively believed that the deceased was arrogant and resisting lawful arrest. 2, the gathering of the angry crowd complicated matters. 3, the accused were policemen on duty. They have good service records and no previous convictions. They have now lost their employment. Their future is bleak. 4, in view of the unblemished records of employment of the accused, their rehabilitation seems to be a realistic proposition. 5, prior to being granted bail, they were kept in prison for a period of approximately 7 months. It follows that the court is now obliged to impose a lesser sentence than life imprisonment. To impose the most appropriate sentence is an onerous and difficult task. All relevant circumstances must be considered and balanced in accordance with the guidelines that have emanated from previous decisions of especially the Supreme Court of Appeal. The main purposes of punishment are prevention, retribution, deterrence, and rehabilitation. See State versus Rabi, 1975, 4 SA 855 AD at 861 to 862. The element of mercy, however, should also be kept in mind. In S versus Harrison, 1973, 3 SA 684 AD at 686A, the court remarked as follows, I quote, "Justice must be done, but mercy, not a sledgehammer, is its concomitant," close quotation. In State versus Zonile, 1959, 3 SA 319 AD at 330E, the court emphasized that the punishment must fit the criminal and the crime. Due to the fact that the individual personal circumstances of the accused differ, each accused circumstances will have to be considered in order to determine whether it may result in the individualization of the sentence. I could, however, not find that the personal circumstances of any of the accused, despite the difference in their ages, differed to that extent from the others that it justified the imposition of different sentences. Although the personal circumstances of the accused are taken into account, it has been stated in the case of the State versus Villagasi 2009, 1 SACR 552 SCA at paragraph 58, that in matters of a serious nature, those circumstances necessarily recede into the background. And that is exactly the position in this case. The aggravating features in this case speak for themselves. The arrest of the deceased and the dragging behind the vehicle was totally unnecessary, uncalled for, and not justified at all. The accused attempted to hide behind their right as law enforcement officers to use reasonable force to arrest and detain the deceased. They clearly abused this right. However, what made their conduct more reprehensible was their cowardly attack in the cell on a defenseless and already seriously injured man. What happened in the cell not only confirmed that they acted with a common purpose, but is regarded as a seriously aggravating feature. The continuous conduct of the accused concerning the injuries inflicted on the deceased was barbaric and totally unacceptable. It goes without saying that the community is entitled to protection against behavior of rogue police officers. Unfortunately, this protection can only to a limited extent be provided by the court in imposing severe sentences in an attempt to prevent and deter other potential perpetrators. The accused, unfortunately for them, did not show any remorse. In the pre-sentence reports, all of them maintained that they were innocent. However, a court should be slow and careful to, without more, regard the lack of remorse as aggravating. The accused were entitled to plead not guilty and are entitled to maintain this attitude, even today. True remorse, however, or contrition, on the other hand, is an important factor that could have had a mitigating effect on the sentence. See State versus Segers, 1972, SA 506 AD at 511G. Although accused 1 and 2 started the whole incident after having been provoked by the deceased, the difference in blameworthiness between them and accused 3 to 8 evened out when accused 3 to 8 participated in the assault on the deceased in the cell. Accordingly, there is no basis concerning the respective contributions requiring imposition of different sentences to which I have already alluded to. Therefore, in my view, the interests of justice in this case demand that there should be uniformity in the sentences of the accused, and accordingly that they should receive the same punishment. Finally, it is kept in mind that the appropriate sentence should be proportionate and commensurate to the crime in question. But as alluded to before, murder is and remains a most serious crime. It is unfortunate that the dependents of the accused will suffer as a result of the accused being sentenced to direct imprisonment. Direct imprisonment, however, is indeed the most appropriate sentence. After having considered all the mitigating and aggravating circumstances, the accused are sentenced as follows. You must now rise, please. Each of you are sentenced to 15 years imprisonment. Court adjourns.
Your destiny is not determined by the township you come from.
The one place we will find movers and shakers is in the township. It's just that they're diamonds in the rough and some of them don't even know it.
Being young with no experience in business is a challenge that Bulelani took upon himself.
I was motivated by the prayer. I was motivated by the love.
To be a novice in business was tough, but experience made him a businessman of note.
It took me 7 years to make my first million. I've got all the scars to prove that I started with nothing.
A journey well traveled.
For me, that is the one major thing. The ability to touch other people's lives. Nothing goes beyond that.
Join your host Puleng Mulebati on Bophelong every Saturday at 5:30 p.m.
Preparing for victory requires intense effort and teamwork. When you get to it, there is no turning back, because all eyes are on you. When it's action time, nothing should stand in your way. Sports Live tackles and analyzes all the sports action. This is the home of all your sport news, updates, and more. Sports Live weekdays at 8:30 p.m.
Interesting judgment that we just saw there in the Johannesburg courts with regards to that incident of police brutality. Of course, the killing of Mido Masia made headlines here in South Africa and the rest of the continent really in recent times, when he was dragged behind a police van and later on passed away, of course, in a police holding cell. Now the police continues to be in the news today. We're going to go directly to Parliament now, where the Portfolio Committee on Police are meeting. Let's go there.
Because we are here solving a problem. And we are not, as I said,
well, it seems as if we've lost sound there in Parliament, where the Portfolio Committee on Police is meeting right now. We'll try and get the sound back up and go there. But time for us now to focus on what's happening on the wider continent. Now, this week, the Burundi crisis has come into sharp focus as the international communities raise concerns about the recent flare-up of violence there. The conflict is resembling that of the horrific events leading up to the 1994 genocide in Rwanda, where around 800,000 people died in ethnic clashes. The recent flare-up in violence has been attributed to the controversial presidential elections in that country in April of this year, where President Pierre Nkurunziza won a controversial third term in power, an issue that is all too familiar, it seems, on the continent. This week in Uganda, well, the country started its campaigning ahead of their elections next year. And we'll also take a look at the role of the courts that they play in this situation. Now, joining us in studio, as he does every week, is our economic and political analyst on what happens in Africa, is Israel Mkhize. Very good morning to you, Israel. Thank you for joining us today.
Morning, Eben. Morning to the viewers.
Israel, let's begin to talk about the most spoken about conflict going on the continent right now, Burundi. Your overview, how do you read the situation? Some people are fearing that we're going back into all-out civil war, ethnic cleansing on the cards and so forth. Your view?
Well, I think, firstly, President Nkurunziza underestimated the post-election reaction of his people. It's unlike in Burkina Faso, where there was a coup there with Dendare, which never enjoyed any support from the low mass base or people in high office. Hence, it was quickly wrapped up and people were brought back to office. In Burundi's case, it's different. Nkurunziza's re-election bid, I mean, it defied the constitution. It defied people who are in the legal framework who had to flee and run to neighboring countries such as Rwanda and etc. So it is interesting, though, to see how President Kagame has come out, to speak against Nkurunziza's posture. I mean, he's even saying, I can't even reach to him to try and engage them on this question.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw the president of Uganda, Museveni, trying to talk to him to relinquish power or something like that. But the problem now is that there's a constitutional crisis because the constitution is saying something else, that the president is supposed to be on the 2 terms, but the president has continued because the referendum did not enjoy wider support.
The concerning thing that's happening, we see that the government is talking about cracking down on illegal firearms, and the deadline is this week for people to hand over illegal firearms. There's a lot of mistrust around this issue because, as we've seen throughout the continent, genocide is always preceded by civilian disarmament. Are you concerned about this kind of crackdown on illegal weapons?
Well, you have to enjoy some level of legitimacy to call on disarmament. President Mandela called for disarmament in South Africa. He said, let's throw away the guns and let's rebuild the country, because they enjoyed a huge popular legitimacy.
Yeah.
But the question with Nkurunziza, it doesn't enjoy such legitimacy. And the worst thing is that his army is seen to be continuing to crack down. That word is just sugarcoating for big brutality on the populace and on unarmed people. So it's every man for himself in such a context. Now, you can imagine what does that do to the economy, what it does to the foreign direct investment prospects. It just rules it out.
What about the region? What about the wider East African region and the like? The effect, if conflict, all-out conflict had to happen there, what would the effects be?
Well, the first thing is the crisis in migration, sporadic migration, because you've got people who are going to be going into other people's countries. Number 2, you must check that around 4 of those countries in East African community have rebased their GDPs to check the health of their economies, and they're quite happy with the status of their economies.
Yeah.
And you don't want to add now a crisis of migration and sporadic social unrest. You have, for instance, in Kenya, they're trying to arrest the situation with the Al-Shabaabs, who hide in Somalia. You've got the recent election in Tanzania, which were quite stable and calm. So you comparatively speaking, obviously there were issues in Zanzibar, but now you would want to have a rather stable region for trade issues, for migration of labor. So what's going on in Burundi, hence you finding these presidents who themselves have constitutional crisis in terms of the terms, are beginning to voice out their concerns.
Let's quickly move to Uganda now. The presidential campaigns have started there. There's already been an outcry about President Yoweri Museveni running another term. What can we expect from these elections next year?
Well, starting in February. Well, I think in Africa we obviously are caught up in the hero worship mentality. I mean, Museveni has been in power since '86 until now. That's about 30 years. But you've got Mbabazi and the other opposition guy who's been, which is Biseke, who's been attempting, I think it's his 3rd attempt now to run against Museveni. So the problem, however, is that when you've got a disenfranchised opposition, where there is divisions in the opposition, because yes, they've spoken about coalition, but now who is going to be humble enough to say, you can be the face of the campaign against this long-standing guy. So if both of them are going to go at each other again, contesting for position, it's going to cause further divisions, and then the incumbent will rise on those fractions.
We'll keep a close eye on what is happening with Uganda's elections. But in Botswana, there's another interesting case playing out with President Ian Khama and the Law Society talking about him bypassing procedure. How do you read that?
Well, that's very interesting and is still developing. What I'm reading is, it looks like in developing democracies, every president wants to somehow play around with this notion of separation of powers to an extent that would obviously favor them.
Yeah.
Because people would think on the long-term projections that should political conditions be such and such, how will I be able to sort of have this unseen, unwritten, or covert influence within other arms of the state? So because they are, the 4 judges were suspended in Botswana, and the faction that is actually on their side, we are looking at the development within the conversation. But what is interesting is you look at the former Chad president, Habre, who has been out of power for 25 years, but is undergoing a trial in Dakar. So you see that there is a concern on sitting heads of state as to what would the justice arm of government, how they react should they meet political enemies, so to speak, either during their presidents or in the post-elect presidential
Israel, thank you. Thanks for joining us again to this week, always with insightful views on what is happening on the continent. Of course, let's just recap the top story on the continent this week. The United Nations says Burundi's political violence is threatening to spiral into a large-scale ethnic conflict. The UN says the ethnic conflict is similar to that which occurred in neighboring Rwanda in 1994, where hundreds of thousands died. Senior UN human rights official Scott Campbell warns that the UN is today in an even worse position to prevent slaughter there.
So, when do you expect to go to Burundi?
Well, we have to apologise for that clip. Unfortunately, the audio on it seems to be problematic this morning. But let's move on. Later this week, we'll be talking about a South African youth group that went to Vietnam to raise awareness about animal conservation, highlighting the plight of rhino horn and ivory poaching. But Vietnam is not only known for their negative part in this, but as an incredible destination to travel to. Vietnam has a history as rich and evocative as anywhere on the planet. Sure, the American war in Vietnam captured the attention of the West, but centuries before that, Vietnam was scrapping with the Chinese, the Khmers, the Chams and the Mongols, which has left an incredible diverse society for us to learn from. Now joining us today is our regular travel advisor, managing director of the Dash Travel Agency, Zenobia Moorman. A very good morning to you, Zenobia.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Vietnam, an interesting country. Why Vietnam? Why must we as South Africans look at Vietnam? What are the kind of attractions there?
I think Vietnam is so well known just for the Vietnam War that people don't actually look past that and realize that there's so much going on in Vietnam. It's a very popular destination for South Africans at the moment. Tour groups suggested, so you do Ho Chi Minh City, you do Hanoi, you do Halong Bay, you do... It's a tour, but it has to be an organized tour because of the places that you go, and especially if you go to Halong Bay, they have houseboats there, but there's only certain amounts of them allowed per night, so you must book long in advance not to be disappointed. So, but there's so much to see. There's a very big French influence that people don't know. Shopping mecca, amazing.
Yeah, the food is also very much influenced by French. Some people might find that strange, but the baguette, for instance, is the national bread still in Vietnam, isn't it?
Correct, yes.
Now tell me about the rest of the food scene there, because, you know, we're always told
in South Africa that the traditions is that you have to eat snake hearts and you have to drink snake vodka or snake oil or the like. But what should you be aware of when you eat in Vietnam?
I wouldn't do that so much, especially not the rice wine that's pickled with snake and stuff like that they believe can cure everything. I wouldn't do that because if you get the Vietnam virus, you will be very ill for a couple of days. So I think the usual rules apply. Just eat in restaurants, but don't eat anything that's too amazing for your system.
So the King Cobra stir fries should be off the menu.
I don't think so.
No, it's a wonderful country that's very diverse, lots of festivals, as most countries in Asia have. What are some of the festivals and what times of the year should people think about going there?
To go to April is the best time because it's winter. If we could have just a little bit of the water that they have at the moment, they've got so much flooding, it'll be great. But yeah, from now until April it's winter. January, February is their Tet Festival, which is their New Year festival, when it's very vibrant and colourful, and that's really a very, very good time to go.
What about medical requirements for us older gentlemen that travel the world? Very important. What should we be on the lookout for?
Vietnam especially, we suggest that you go for a full medical about 6 weeks before you go to Vietnam. Make sure you're fit and healthy, and have very good travel insurance. Medical evacuations insurance is very important because the medical facilities are not that great in Vietnam. And as soon as you feel ill, don't think you're being a baby. Just go to the doctor and have it seen to, because it could be that you're ill and then you must be evacuated quickly.
Now, religion is always a very important thing that we have to think about when we travel. What's the sort of do's and don'ts in Vietnam then?
They're a Buddhist country, so they peace-loving people, I would imagine. So I think that's the main thing, is just the usual respect. And when you go into their Buddhist temples, don't wear shoes, cover yourself, dress conservatively. But apart from that, there's not real religious issues.
Well, it's a beautiful country. Yes. I haven't been there myself, but hopefully one day I'll get to Vietnam. Zenobia, thank you for joining us as always. Zenobia Moolman, she's the Managing Director of the Dash Travel Agency in Johannesburg. She comes here every week to tell us where to travel to, what to do and what not to do. Very important. Thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you.
Of course, a very important development a short while ago, about 20 minutes ago, the judge handed down a sentencing in the Mido Masia police brutality case. So those of you who remember, of course, it's a case where this taxi driver, Mido Masia, Mozambican national, was dragged behind a police van here in Johannesburg. He died in a holding cell a little bit later. I can tell you the judge passed down a 15-year sentence in this case. Let's just go back and listen to that sentencing procedure.
The accused, unfortunately for them, did not show any remorse. In the pre-sentence reports, all of them maintained that they were innocent. However, a court should be slow and careful to, without more, regard the lack of remorse as aggravating. The accused were entitled to plead not guilty and are entitled to maintain this attitude, even today. True remorse, however, or contrition, on the other hand, is an important factor that could have had a mitigating effect on the sentence. See State v. Segers, 1972, SA 506 AD at 511G. Although accused 1 and 2 started the whole incident after having been provoked by the deceased, the difference in blameworthiness between them and accused 3 to 8 evened out when accused 3 to 8 participated in the assault on the deceased in the cell. Accordingly, there is no basis concerning the respective contributions requiring imposition of different sentences to which I have already alluded to. Therefore, in my view, the interests of justice in this case demand that there should be uniformity in the sentences of the accused, and accordingly that they should receive the same punishment. Finally, it is kept in mind that the appropriate sentence should be proportionate and commensurate to the crime in question. But as alluded to before, murder is and remains a most serious crime. It is unfortunate that the dependents of the accused will suffer as a result of the accused being sentenced to direct imprisonment. Direct imprisonment, however, is indeed the most appropriate sentence. After having considered all the mitigating and aggravating circumstances, the accused are sentenced as follows. You must now rise, please. Each of you are sentenced to 15 years imprisonment. Court adjourns.
There were gasps all around the courtroom when that 15-year sentence was handed down to the 8 police officers implicated in the murder of Mido Masea. Well, we're heading up to the top of the hour. Elvis is standing by to give us an update, but first we'll take a short break. See you now.
Eight policemen accused of killing the Mozambican taxi driver Mido Masea have all been sentenced to 15 years in jail. Drought and water shortages to come under the spotlight at the Portfolio Committee on Water and Sanitation in Parliament. And the provincial police commissioners to know their fate no later than this afternoon for allegedly misleading Parliament. These are some of your stories coming up in a short while, but first let's find out from Kendall Makamate what he has in store for us in the sports news. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Elvis. Thank you very much. In the sports, and good morning to you, actually. What we've got for you in sports today. The head of RUSADA, the Russian anti-doping agency, closes the Moscow anti-doping lab at the center of the scandal that has rocked the athletics world. Also, the joint Belgium-Dutch 2018 World Cup bid seeks advice on compensation for almost $11 million from FIFA. And Bafana Bafana arrive in Luanda, Angola, ahead of their crucial 2018 World Cup qualifier against Os Palancas Negras. That's what we've got for you at 11:30 in the sports. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. That's all coming up later, but right now, news just in. The High Court in Pretoria has sentenced 8 former police officers convicted of the murder of the Mozambican taxi driver Mido Masea to 15 years imprisonment each. The 8 men were found guilty of murder in August. Masea was dragged in full public view after a minor traffic violation. He was later found dead in police holding cells at the Davidton police station, lying in a pool of blood. A post-mortem report revealed that the 25-year-old had been severely assaulted. He died from multiple injuries and lack of oxygen. The court found that all former policemen had a hand in his killing and convicted them of murder. Their lawyers will now have to convince the court why they should not be given a much harsher sentence than that, while the state is expected to call for that lengthier jail time. But that has already happened. They've, as you heard there, they were sentenced to 15 years in prison.
The accused unfortunately for them, did not show any remorse. In the pre-sentence reports, all of them maintained that they were innocent. However, a court should be slow and careful to, without more, regard the lack of remorse as aggravating. The accused were entitled to plead not guilty and are entitled to maintain this attitude, even today. True remorse, however, or contrition on the other hand, is an important factor that could have had a mitigating effect on the sentence. See State versus Segers, 1972, SA 506 AD at 511G. Although accused 1 and 2 started the whole incident after having been provoked by the deceased, the difference in blameworthiness between them and accused 3 to 8 evened out when accused 3 to 8 participated in the assault on the deceased in the cell. Accordingly, there is no basis concerning the respective contributions requiring the imposition of different sentences to which I have already alluded to. Therefore, in my view, the interests of justice in this case demand that there should be uniformity in the sentences of the accused and accordingly that they should receive the same punishment. Finally, it is kept in mind that the appropriate sentence should be proportionate and commensurate to the crime in question. But as alluded to before, murder is and remains a most serious crime. It is unfortunate that the dependents of the accused will suffer as a result of the accused being sentenced to direct imprisonment. Direct imprisonment, however, is indeed the most appropriate sentence. After having considered all the mitigating and aggravating circumstances, the accused are sentenced as follows. You must now rise, please. Each of you are sentenced to 15 years imprisonment.
Now, another breaking news here with us on Newsroom. Striking parliamentary staff have disrupted a meeting of the police committee. Staff affiliated to the trade union Nahau walked into the committee singing and dancing. That committee is discussing its findings and recommendation on its inquiry into the conduct of SAPS management. Staff are on their third day of striking over performance bonuses and the vetting processes. The police committee is releasing its draft report after inquiring on whether the SAPS management were truthful in their dealings with them. SAPS management released a statement in August, shortly after the Farlam Commission's recommendations were made public, in which they pledged support to Piecha. The committee has found that this was aimed at putting public pressure on President Jacob Zuma, who had by that time already asked Piecha to provide reasons why she should stay in her position. The Farlam Commission recommended that Piecha's fitness to hold office should be investigated. Now, the Parliament's Portfolio or Police Committee has recommended that action should be taken against the 6 officials for their role in backing the suspended Police Commissioner Ria Piecha. One of them is Piecha's spokesperson, Solomon Makale. The committee found that he was obstructive and not forthcoming. The committee is releasing its draft report after an inquiry on whether the SAPS management were truthful in their dealings with them. Committee chairperson Francois Beekman says he was deliberate in misleading the committee. Meanwhile, 3 Krugersdorp police officers will appear in court again on Friday for a bail application. They were arrested after being captured on CCTV footage, allegedly shooting and killing a robbery suspect. Yesterday, they appeared in the Krugersdorp Magistrates Court. The Police and Prison Civil Union, POPCRU and the South African Police Union have come out in support of the accused, saying they want them released on bail. In financial news now, the Reserve Bank has come under further pressure to hike the interest rate when it meets next week, following the Rand's latest plunge. The Rand continued its record-breaking slide yesterday when it briefly hit a new all-time low of 14.37 to the dollar. The Rand is facing a double body blow. Poor data out of China affects emerging markets like our own that rely on the Chinese market. And the dollar has been soaring given expectations that the U.S. Federal Reserve will hike rates in December. Following that story, Zimbabwe's retailers are rejecting the rand as the value of South Africa's currency continues to slide. But economists in Zimbabwe don't believe that the South African rand will cease to be used in Zimbabwe, though demand for it is declining. Now, this as the value of the currency depreciate against the US dollar. Early on, I spoke to SABC correspondent Shingai Nyoka and asked her why she thinks that retailers are rejecting the South African currency.
We spoke to some of those retailers, especially vendors, yesterday, and essentially what they're saying. As you know, Zimbabwe is very close in terms of trade with South Africa. At least 60% of the goods that are imported into the country are coming from South Africa. And so for a time, the South African rand was very popular. But given the slide over the last few months or so, people are saying that holding on to the South African rand is increasing their loss. Because of the rapid depreciation of the rand, or the fact that they can't be certain that it'll be worth what they bought it for. And so, as you said, there's a 10% increase in the use of the US dollars on the streets. They've stopped accepting the rand coins altogether because of the depreciation of the rand. And so really at this point, it was a very popular currency, but not so much anymore as a result of its depreciation.
Now, the Confederation of the Zimbabwean Retailers saying that it's against the law for businesses to reject the rand, whereas their members are still practicing it. Why?
Well, in most cases, what we've seen is that your large retailers are still accepting the rand at a very much a higher rate, but the rand coins are not being accepted. The Retailers Association position is that this is legal tender. Zimbabwe has a basket of currencies. It expanded those currencies to 9 to include the Chinese yuan, the Japanese yen, the Indian rupee, as well as a basket of other currencies, including the European Union currency. And its point is that as long as it is legal, as long as these currencies are legal tender, businesses are required to accept them and then to change them at the bank. But clearly on the ground, we're seeing with ice cream vendors, for example, and major ice cream companies, they are simply not accepting rands on the street.
Now, Zimbabwe share borders with us here in South Africa. How is this recent situation going to affect people on the ground and Zimbabweans living and working in South Africa?
Well, over the last 6 years or so, you'll find that the borders or the regions that border South Africa have tended to use the rand a lot more than the northern regions of the country. But what the Bankers Association is saying is that these regions still use the rand, even though in those areas it's declining as well. But what it means for Zimbabweans traveling to Zimbabwe is that they can no longer use the rand as widely as they used to, that they need to convert the money to US dollars in case the rand is not accepted where they want to use it.
And why does economists still believe that it will not be ceased to be used, the rand that is in the country?
No, certainly it won't. And the Bankers Association has made the point that rand accounts, even though the use of them is in decline, the rand accounts still remain open. As I mentioned earlier, Zimbabwe is, or South Africa is Zimbabwe's largest trading partner. It imports 60% of goods from South Africa, exports 50% of its goods to South Africa. So really at this stage, it remains legal tender, even though many of the people on the street are rejecting it. Business will still want to keep these accounts open and still keep using the rand for purposes of trading with South Africa.
The rand under pressure, even in Zimbabwe. Now, the Department of Water and Sanitation here will brief the Portfolio Committee in Parliament about the status of the drought in South Africa later today. The department is expected to reveal its strategies and interventions in respect of the drought and the disbursement of relief to provinces. Now, this comes as the country faces a burgeoning water challenge that has depleted many municipalities and the agricultural sector since last year. So far, KwaZulu-Natal and the Free State have been declared drought disaster areas. Shortages of medical stocks, insufficient human resources, poor management, facilities in disrepair and broken equipment. These are just some of the concerns listed in the 8 key findings of the report by the People's Commission of Inquiry dealing with the state of the Free State Health Department. The commission was initiated by the Treatment Action Campaign and the investigation was conducted in July this year. One of the commissioners, Bishop Paul Verheyen, believes that communication lines have to be kept open between the department and directly involve stakeholders in order to deal with the issues in the report. Shale gas to be extracted through fracking could be a game changer in the country's energy needs. Now, that's according to an ecologist, Professor Bob Scholes. Now, he was speaking at the public briefing of the Strategic Environmental Assessment for Shale Gas that was held in Victoria West in the Northern Cape. The Northern Cape is one of the 3 provinces that have been identified for the assessment.
The sparse, evocative Karoo in the Northern Cape may soon be a place of geologists, scientists, and now fracking. This comes as the area has been considered to be one of the most prospective areas for shale gas in the country. Experts say government is keen on fracking for natural gas in the Karoo. This as a way of expanding gas in the country. They say shale gas will also come with many positive economic advantages.
Shale gas could be one extra thing into our list of ways we get energy. And in some ways, it has some advantages. It burns about twice as clean as coal, so we have a half the effect on the climate. And the damage on the surface is much, much less than, for instance, a coal mine. So this would be economically beneficial. We would not have to import gas or import less gas and oil, and it would be important from our energy security point of view.
The borehole water could be a serious problem for the communities if it is contaminated. This would also be a serious problem for farmers.
The farmers are concerned about the possibilities of their water being contaminated. But I think the information sessions that's being held like today is part of the process to address these concerns. And as the process carries on, I am sure that the answers will be given to the concerns that the farmers have at this point in time.
The Department of Environmental Affairs says that scientists have been roped to engage with communities that will be affected by the proposed shale gas explorations, which, if successful, will lead to fracking in the Karoo. Areas that are being assessed include the Northern Cape, the Western Cape, and the Eastern Cape. The assessment is expected to be completed in 2017. Silwana Khachau, SABC News, Victoria West in the Northern Cape.
Now that's all the news we have for you. Eben will be back right after the break.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom. Time for us to shift our focus to regional news here in South Africa. Yesterday, the Public Service Commission, also known as the PSC, briefed members of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature on performance of Gauteng departments. The objective of the briefing was to evaluate the extent to which Gauteng government departments comply with the values and principles set out in Section 195 of the 1996 Constitution of the Republic. Now, the main aim of the Commission is to promote the constitutionally enshrined democratic values and principles throughout the public service by investigating, monitoring, evaluating the organisation and administration, as well as personnel practices. Now, for more on how Gauteng departments have been performing, we are joined in studio by the Gauteng Public Service Commissioner, Mr. Michael Seloane. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, and good morning to the viewers.
How are Gauteng's departments performing, if we can cut to the chase like that?
It's basically 50-50, if I can call it that way.
Mm-hmm.
We have about 9 constitutional values which are enshrined in Chapter 10 of the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
And then we look at how they perform, but we'll not look at everything. One of the things that we're looking at is a high standard of professional ethics. To that extent, we look at the financial disclosure framework, wherein all senior managers, meaning from director up till DG, are expected to submit their financial interests to the to the executive authority, which is the minister or the MECs in the provinces. And the minister submits those disclosure forms to the PSC to scrutinize them, to check if there is any potential conflict of interest or actual conflict of interest. So what we expect is 100% submission rate in terms of the disclosure framework. So a number of departments in Gauteng, only about 64% of the departments have submitted 100%. So the others are still struggling to get a 100% submission. And one of the departments which could not submit by the 31st of May is community safety. And their reason is that they don't have the ethics officer who follows up some of these issues. Ethics officers are important players in the department to ensure that the code of conduct is promoted in the department, and then when disclosure happens, all the forms come to the Public Service Commission. Another aspect is financial misconduct that we're looking at. When cases of financial misconduct, which are covered in Public Finance Management Act and the Treasury regulations, once they're investigated and concluded, they must be submitted to the Treasury and to Public Service Commission and to the Auditor General. So when they come to us, we do some analysis of those cases to check how much is involved, how much is being recovered, how many cases are involved, what type of cases are those. So over the past 5 years, we have starting from 2010-11 financial year, there were only about 64 cases in Gauteng. And then they increased to 129 cases in 11-12 financial year, and then increased to 189 in 12-13 financial year, and then went down to 91 in 13-14 and 222 in 14-15. And the amount of money involved over the past 5 years
this is in financial misconduct.
It's financial misconduct. Over the past 5 years is almost 91.5 million or 92 million closely. And then those cases, there are cases of mismanagement of funds, gross negligence, theft, fraud, corruption, and amongst those. And some of the cases, whilst there are bad conduct in the public service, at the same time, they are criminal in nature, like fraud, theft, and corruption. So those cases have to be reported to the police. And especially in terms of prevention of prevention of corruption and combating of, this act is prevention and combating of corrupt Activities Act.
Yeah.
In terms of that, any loss of 100,000 or more should be automatically reported by the officials in the department. And if not done, they will be complicit in the fraud itself.
What were some of the other recommendations that the studies put forward?
Amongst the recommendations, because on every aspect we have a recommendation. With regard to financial disclosure framework, the recommendations that we come up with is that where there is conflict of interest, because, for example, we have detected in the past 2 financial years that 3 officials conducted business with the state. Conducting business with government, it's misconduct because as a senior manager, you are the steward of the resources, and then you are the ones who do the specifications, and you adjudicate the tenders. And if you own the company and you issue you award a tender to a company that you own, it's definitely against the law. So we recommend to the MECs that they must take disciplinary action against such officials. With respect to financial misconduct, the money that is lost in terms of the regulation, Public Finance Management Act and the Treasury regulations, the accounting officer has to recover that money. So we are recommending that executive authorities, MECs, must institute disciplinary actions against accounting officers who are not recovering that money. And then we have observed that in most cases, after the conclusion of cases of financial misconduct, they don't ensure that the official who is guilty signs an acknowledgement of debt so that they can make arrangement to repay the money. And if you have not done so, then it becomes difficult to recover the money. But once it is done, then it will be almost easier to recover that money. And if you don't, then your assets may be attached to make sure that the money comes back.
Certainly very strong steps that you are putting forward. I thank you for joining us today. That's the Gauteng Public Service Commissioner, Mr. Michael Seloane, joining us live in our studio to talk about the performance of Gauteng's departments. Of course, there will be a media event this evening, I'm sure, at Gibbs, where the mayor will be putting this forward. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Now, top story at the moment, of course, is outside the court now. Mangoba Mkunu is joining us live from outside the court where Mido Masia's murderers were sentenced a short while ago. Very good. It's good morning still, Mangoba. Just give us a quick overview what happened earlier.
Well, certainly, Eben, Judge Berbem has handed down his sentence in this particular matter that has gone on for 2 years. He was not very light in handing down his sentence, saying that he believed that the policemen acted barbarically that day when they dragged Mido Masia and also assaulted him in holding cells. He said that their behavior cannot be condoned, and therefore he said that they should be given a harsh sentence. He's given them 15 years, which is a minimum sentence for murder in South Africa, and he too, like the state, also did say that he does not believe that a life sentence will be an appropriate sentence for these officers, as they have already been punished for the crime by being suspended and also serving some jail time after they were suspended from duty. So therefore, he believed that while they cannot escape a jail term, that 15 years would be enough for these policemen. But IPID, which is the Independent Police Investigative Directorate, has been the one that's been investigating this matter, and that actually took this matter before the court. I'm joined now by the spokesperson of IPID, Mr. Roni Raburabu, just to get a reaction from him on what they think of the sentence. Mr. Roni Raburabu, welcome to the news program.
Thank you, sir.
Firstly, your reaction to today's sentencing by Judge Berbem. Do you think it was a fair one?
We believe that it was a fair one, and we are very happy as a department that the sentence was as it is.
And in terms of, we know that this action was largely, condemned by many on many fronts. Do you think that this particular sentence today will act as a deterrent to other would-be offenders or policemen that would find themselves in such circumstances of breaking the law?
We do believe that it will serve as a deterrent to other police officers that will be breaking the law. And for us, we also feel that we have been vindicated since there were some accusations leveled against us as a department to say we are grandstanding in cases like this.
The judge also spoke very intensely about the image this has done to the police service. Do you think that this this could change that particular negative perception, or could it help in trying to assist in, painting a much more positive picture in terms of the fact that those who are found on the wrong will be punished severely?
I think it does in a way that the police themselves, they have actually dismissed these members from the service some time ago. So that in itself actually it will make the community also to believe that the police are doing something about rogue elements within their ranks.
Thank you very much. That was Mr. Raburabu from the Investigative Police Directorate speaking to us there. We just spoken to the family as well or the family representative rather of the Mido Masia family who was here in court, and he's saying basically that they believe that justice was served today and that they think that 15 years in jail is an appropriate sentence for these 8 policemen, and that it would in fact act as a deterrent. But we've also spoken to the lawyers representing the 8 policemen, and what they've told us is that they do plan to appeal this matter. They're saying that they are not happy with the conviction that was given to the 8 policemen. You'll know that Judge Barakbam found all of them guilty of murder under a principle of common purpose, meaning that they all had an intention to kill Mido Masia that day. So they're saying that they're not happy with that ruling, believing that some of them participated more in the action of actually leading to Masia's demise than others. So they believe that this particular issue should be looked at, and they want to take this matter on appeal at a higher court, hoping that it could come to a different conclusion. But then again, this is a process that is likely to start after everything is wrapped up here in court, and certainly we are here to hear if this will go on ahead. We also spoke to the family representatives who were saying that the civil claim is also still ongoing, and they're expecting to finalize the issue sometime before December with regards to the amount that will be given or will be compensated to the Masia family for their loss.
Mangwaba, thank you very much for that update. A comprehensive wrap of what happened at courtside, of course, today. 15 years imprisonment, that's the sentence for the 8 police officers, former police officers now, who were implicated in the murder of taxi driver Mozambican national Mido Masia. Time now for us to go to sports, our sports update, a comprehensive one at that, with Kendall Makamate.
Thank you very much, Evan, and a very good morning to all of you. Now, the acting president of the Russian Athletics Federation, Vadim Zelichnok, has rejected the World Anti-Doping Agency accusations of doping violations and expressed hope that Russian athletes would not be banned from participating in the upcoming Olympic Games and the World Cup. Zelichnok dismissed the Commission's accusations and said the ban, if introduced, would also punish athletes who've never doped. Julia Lyubova reports.
The Russian Anti-Doping Agency has until 18th of November to explain wrongdoings exposed in the damning report by the World Anti-Doping Agency. But the agency's head insists the organization is within WADA standards and will cooperate with the anti-doping authorities.
I believe that problems obviously exist, but Russia is on the path to clear its name and change. This is a trend recently. According to objective facts, and we use statistics of changes, Russian anti-doping operates totally in accordance with the criteria and fights doping effectively enough.
According to the World Anti-Doping Agency, Russian athletes committed a total of 225 offences in 2013, which is about 12% of all violations globally. The Russian Anti-Doping Agency...
All right, we'll have to cut that one there, because early on today I spoke to sports journalist Mark Ouma on the doping and corruption scandal that's been called the biggest in the history of sports. I started by asking him what he thought of the call for a blanket ban on the Russian Athletics Federation.
WADA has proposed that Russia be banned or suspended from athletics. That is blanket punishment, which is incompatible with the spirit of separating the innocent from the guilty. There are about 5 to 10 Russians who have been found wanting, and with their entourage, they should face the relevant sanctions in a procedural manner. And yet, we've got more than 500,000 Russians who are innocent. Right now, in the World Athletics nominees for the World Athlete of the Year, there's a Russian 400-meter hurdler. Must he also be sanctioned so he's innocent? Now, but my biggest concern is Sebastian Coe, because on the website of IAAF, he has come out and said, I stand for sanctions, suspension of Russia, and I only want my committee just to endorse them. So are they just there to be rubber stamped? We talk about democracy. So I think this is where I have a big concern that what is happening is that you have people of Britain using this as a political fight against the Russians.
Well, before we get into that, here's a quick one. 12% of all violations, doping violations over the last few years are by Russian athletes. Yes. So it's not just a small number of athletes. Yes, 5 to 8 have been fingered currently. Yes. But there's a whole host of other doping cases that need to be looked at. 1,417 samples were destroyed by RUSADA recently. Yes. Doesn't that not
that
to some
causes
kind
concern.
Of illicit dealings?
Yes, because that was in 2011. And actually the Russians came out and had to deal with the WADA-accredited laboratory in Moscow. Now, then came Sochi, 2014. It's still in Russia. They had a WADA-accredited laboratory, and the Russians had upped their game. They had pulled up their socks, which means there was an improvement from what happened in 2011 in the World Championships. And this is not being mentioned. What I'm saying is we don't protect anybody. Even if there were 2,000 Russians who have gone wrong, there are over 500,000 who are innocent. Let us, for example, let's just for argument's sake say we have 5,000 Russians who are done wrong. That's just for argument. But you've got 500,000 innocent Russians. Do you just give a blanket thing? You address the issue of that is right there. And that's where Sebastian Coe is wrong, Dick Pound has been wrong, and surely Sir Craig Wrigley, who's head of WADA. You see, Sir Craig Wrigley is British. Sebastian Coe is British. And it looks like it's a British thing fighting the Russians, and the Germans will jump on the bandwagon because they have a long-standing quarrel with the Russians from the World Bank, from the Second World War. And that's why Thomas Bach is talking the way he is. Collective punishment is wrong.
I agree with you. Now, I think there's certainly a case to be made for how the geopolitics plays its part in what's going on. But having said that, there are quite a few other things that we need to look at. Yes. And one of them being the RUSADA's lab in Moscow has just been closed down. Yes. Why would it get closed down if they felt that it was up to scratch?
Now, first of all, why are they closing it now? The problem stemmed in 2011. That has been a lapse on the part of WADA. If WADA detected that that lab was not up to scratch, they should have dealt with it in 2011, not 2015.
Let's look at Sebastian Coe. You mentioned that Sebastian Coe, he's calling for this blanket ban and asking his executive at the IAAF to be rubber stamping his predetermined decision. Yes. Where was Sebastian Coe in 2011 in South Korea? Where was Sebastian Coe in 2012? Because apparently there were very lax doping controls during the Olympics. And he's been a vice president of IAAF for some time.
He's been around. The thing is that there was agitation to ban Russia after 2011. But Lamine Diack, who was then the president of the federation, said, no, we can't have a blanket punishment. We must deal with people individually. And I think this is why he's now being vilified. I think this is why also his son, Papa Masete Diack, is being accused of taking a bribe. This allegation didn't come now. It came in 2011. Papa Diack said, please bring the allegation. Let us look at its veracity in a court of law. Up to now, 4 years, they have not done it. Now, Masete Diack is very unique. He's the first indigenous African to make the grade in world global sports marketing. He's dealt with Coca-Cola, Samsung. He's dealt with Sinopec, the Chinese petroleum company. He's dealt with VT Banks and several sports. And his name is clear. But now you want to put this cloud on him on the basis of certain rumors. I think the British press has also done something very wrong because they go with these innuendos, come with the facts. Actually, the first reaction of the Russian government was, please, let us have real facts with evidence to deal with it. They're not saying that there's no problem. They're saying that put the facts and let's look at the veracity of the facts.
Here's something that's very interesting. When one looks at what's been happening in world sport over the last 12 to 24 months, firstly, let's go to FIFA, the first big scandal to hit the world, the entire world. There was a whole host of computers and hard drives that were destroyed in Russia, which some people say would have been party to that investigation on whether there was bribery and corruption in Russia's bid for 2018. So, destroyed evidence there. Now we look here at the IWF doping case. 1,417 blood samples destroyed.
Evidence missing. That
what is
causes concern.
That certainly points to something fishy going on in Russia.
Yes. Well, everything must be investigated. Now, when you talk about FIFA, we must also now look at what has come out, because I think when the United States government came up and said the feds got involved, because the problems in FIFA have festered for 40 years, and the European law enforcement had all access to but they did nothing. It was only after President Obama took office and then the Department of Justice started doing its investigation. Now, I hope you'll get a chance to bring Danny Jordan in the studio and let him tell you what President Dilma of Brazil told. She read the Riot Act to the FIFA Congress in 2014. And Brazil has instituted procedures because the corruption money from FIFA went into the Brazilian Federation, which was headed by Ricardo Teixeira, the nephew of Havelange, the source of all this problem, and Andrade, the head of cocaine. So it was not even possible to know which is FIFA money and which is cocaine money. Judges, police, politicians were all corrupted. But now they are dealing with the matter very systematically in Brazil. Brazil is setting a very good example.
So are you basically, what we can get from this is that this is bigger than what meets the eye, what's happening with Diak, Lamin and his son, Papis, is politically motivated, one, and also because he didn't go with the blanket ban that SEBCO was calling for.
Precisely.
Right.
Precisely. And what is happening in athletics is just peanuts compared to what's happening in football.
All right. Now, I want to thank you very much, Mark Homer, for coming through. I do believe there are lots more to uncover and unearth, and I'm hoping that we're able to talk to you again at some point, and we definitely have to come back and revisit this story as it develops.
I agree with you, and I hope that our African people and other developing countries don't just jump onto the bandwagon. Let them assess the facts, and on the basis make well thought out decisions on the way. Let's not get involved in other people's fights.
Right, very interesting chat we had a little earlier. Now, moving on to other sports stories. Netherlands and Belgium have sought legal advice of whether to seek compensation for the cost of their abortive World Cup bids after discovering the choice of Russia for the 2018 finals was preordained. The Dutch and Belgian FAs announced on Tuesday that they'd briefed a legal firm after suspended FIFA President Sepp Blatter said last week that football's governing body determined Russia as host long before the completion of the bidding process. Blatter made the disclosure in an interview with Russian reporters, sparking uproar from the joint Belgian-Dutch bid and from England. The Dutch FA agrees that an interview is not enough to take steps, but they are preparing for the outcome of the continuing investigation. And that's where we leave it with the sport. We'll now cross over to Eben.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kendall. Now, drought continues to be a concern for all of us here in Southern Africa. The Inkamati Usutu Catchment Management Agency, responsible for the protection, conservation, development and management of water resources in South Africa, is concerned about the current drought sweeping the country. The Weather Service has warned that a heat wave with persistently high temperatures is expected over the low veld of Mpumalanga and Limpopo, the Limpopo Valley and the southwestern bushveld. The agency has officially imposed water restrictions on both the agricultural and domestic sectors due to significantly prevailing below normal rainfall and the extreme high temperatures. The Inkamati Usutu Water Management Area is currently not able to meet the needs of water users. Now, to tell us about the current situation, we are joined in our Nelspruit studio by the Manager for River Operations and Data Management, Mr. Brian Jackson. A very good morning to you, Mr. Jackson. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
The outlook doesn't look good. Can you give us an idea of the kinds of problems that you faced with in your area right now?
Yes, well, thank you for the introduction. Just one small correction. We're only responsible for the Nkomati Water Management Area, which is part of Mpumalanga, so I will speak to you about that. But the main problem, as you've already said, is the severe temperatures that we can expect in summer and late summer, and the quite a high confidence of below normal rainfall. Now, this manifests for us into very reduced runoff in the rivers, and we have to manage those rivers, and we have to try and get the flow all the way down to the Kruger National Park and to Mozambique at the bottom end. And it's a very long river, and we only have one dam to manage it with, and it makes it quite a difficult task. And all the users along that river need to get the water equitably. And that's our main task and challenge at the moment.
Tell us quickly about the kind of water restrictions that's affecting both agriculture and the domestic sectors in your area.
Okay. Well, for the main river in our area, the Crocodile River, agriculture is currently restricted at 35% from the Kuena Dam system because the dam is now dropped below 70% full. These are determined by fancy computers models that we have based on the dam levels and long-term historical statistics. And we use those models to try and estimate when we need to bring in restrictions and how much. That's what we're doing. For agriculture gets restricted more than domestic supply. Actual basic human needs are not restricted at the moment, but we have requested municipalities to restrict users on the watering of garden and filling up of swimming pools and washing of swimming cars and those type of activities that are not directly related to the basic human needs.
The area is also very rich with wildlife where you are. How's the drought affecting wildlife in the area? Are we seeing a lot of animals in trouble right now, or are we seeing a lot of them dying out already?
I think you should probably ask the Kruger National Park that. They would know better. But we have noticed very, very, very dry conditions in that area and are starting to get some reports of the animals being affected by this drought. I am more concerned going through this summer season ahead in the next few months, and if we don't get the rain and we do get the high temperatures, come 3 months from now we'll be in a much worse situation, and I think you'll be hearing a lot more about those kind of problems. Yeah.
Finally, is there any advice that you can give to the communities there, what they should be doing to try and help you with this crisis?
Yes, I mean, it's one thing for us to require restrictions and request restrictions from the users. At the end of the day, it comes down to the individual and their responsibility. If people do not obey these rules or comply with them, then we are not going to be able to get through this drought as best as we can, and the systems may fail in the coming year or so. So users need to comply as much as they can, and they need to save water as much as they can. And there's a number of things you can do as a user living in a town. Obviously, please don't water your gardens and your lawns as little as possible. Use your bath water for more than one person as much as possible. Don't wash your cars, don't fill your swimming pools. And a lot of other things. If you want to start spending money, you can actually find toilets that use a lot less water when they flush, and shower heads that use a lot less water when they flush. Don't take long showers. You can go onto the internet as well and look up these things and what you can do to save water. It's probably a good idea.
Thank you very much for joining us. That's Brian Jackson, who's the manager for River Operations and Data Management down at the Nkomati Usutu Catchment Management Agency. That, of course, is in Mpumalanga. The entire area is in the midst of the worst drought in more than 20 years now. Today we ask you a question that's somewhat in relation to that. Elvis, just run us through that.
Now, can the water...
You can't run.
Now, let's...
We're not done yet, guys. We're not done yet. Can we...
so can we just have the question? And well,
let's hear it.
Can the water slide festival that's happening over the festive season, can it be held during this water crisis? That's the question we posed to you. Did we have some comments? And I wonder if there's
we had a couple of comments. Can we run the comments on there quickly, guys?
Yeah, let's use those as our credit for today. How's that?
And it seems like...
There are some of our viewers. Keith, the hoodoo priest, says...
unless it's run on sewer water, no. And still, if that were the case, we'd better use the water for irrigation. Nice one.
There you have it. Use the sewer water better. Conqueror says, we have water crisis at the moment. This slide, the city is a waste of time and water that we desperately need.
Conqueror, yep. That talks about, from an ownership and responsibility point of view, the company should embrace the drought and withdraw the event. That is a very sobering thought. Thank you to Odette, and thanks to all of you who are interacting with us on this platform, telling us, of course, what is happening. Drought is affecting all of us. Use less water. There's no... Well, that's Bulelani. That's Bulelani Philip. Of course, there is a protest going on at Parliament right now at the top of the hour, 12 o'clock. Shortly, the next program will be dealing with that issue. Bulelani is about to get ready. Thanks, guys.
From myself, Elvis Preslin.
Me, Kendall Makamate.
See you tomorrow. Bye.
Ciao for now.
Thank you.